Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. You can support the author. Don't forget to subscribe the channel. This is the Necromancer of the Shadows. I can't lose this chance since there are not many items that contain bountiful life force like life water. Anderson thought as the image of his dead son appeared in his mind. When is the auction? He asked Leopold in a cold voice. Hearing Anderson, a hidden smile appeared on Leopold's face. 10 days. The life water will be auctioned off after 10 days. Far away from the Magmara kingdom, in a secluded place within the wilderness. Two beautiful women were carving some strange patterns on the ground. One of the women had long, light green hair, red eyes, and her fair skin was adorned with a bark-like texture that gave her a natural beauty. She was wearing a simple long dress and was looking at the drawn patterns on the ground carefully. It's done. Suddenly, the woman with green hair heard a voice and looked at the second woman, who was nodding her head in satisfaction after completing the patterns on the ground. The second woman had long jet black hair, black eyes, and she was wearing a black dress. Seeing the black-haired woman finish the patterns, the green-haired woman walked to her and looked at the ground with a surprised expression on her face. You just saw me creating this formation once, but you already learned it. Ashley said in a voice filled with admiration, looking at Anastasia as if she were her idol. Anastasia smiled proudly when she heard Ashley and shamelessly praised herself. Of course, I am one of the smartest people in Utopia. It's a piece of cake for me to learn something like this. Although Anastasia's words were narcissistic, Ashley couldn't disagree, so she nodded her head. Indeed, to learn a space formation of this level after seeing it just once. You are really smart. Looks like Grandpa was right, wisdom really comes with age. Anastasia was quite happy when she heard the first half of Ashley's sentence, but when she heard the second half, her proud smile stiffened and she looked at Ashley with a twitching mouth. This girl, she wants to pick a fight with me, right? Ashley didn't notice Anastasia's stiffened smile and placed her hand on the patterns she had drawn on the ground. After placing her hands on them, she took a deep breath and silver light flashed around her as she started to imbue the patterns with the conceptual energy of space. As the conceptual energy of space flowed through the patterns, they lit up with a bright light and the space around Anastasia and Ashley started to shake. Around 5 minutes later, the space around them did not change, but both of them could feel that a few thousand kilometers of area around them was completely isolated from the outside world as if they were in a small dimension. Good. It's also working just fine. Ashley nodded her head when she felt the area was completely isolated from the outside world and stopped pouring her conceptual energy of space into the patterns. As she stopped, the shining patterns on the ground dimmed, but a faint light was still shining within them, maintaining the small dimension. Finally, we have created 2 formations for both of them, Ashley said after stopping the flow of energy. She stood up from the ground and looked at Anastasia. Should we go back? Hearing Ashley, Anastasia shook her head. No, we need to create 3 more space isolation formations around the formation we just created. What? Ashley was dumbfounded when she heard Anastasia and looked at her with a blank expression. What do you mean by we need to create 3 more formations around this one? Isn't one more than enough? Anastasia smirked when she heard Ashley and asked in an amused voice. Do you think I am like Alaric and Silvin? This formation might be able to handle their power, but it will collapse in just a few seconds the moment I take action. Ashley was stunned when she heard Anastasia and frowned. Didn't we test the first formation that we created earlier? That formation was easily able to handle Grandpa and Alaric's power. Although you are stronger than them, I don't think it will be a problem for the formation to handle your power for around 10 minutes or so. Ashley was quite confident in the space isolation formation she created. Although it was not as good as the defense formation that covered the capital of the Gehenna Empire, it was still one of the best space formations she could create, and even a peak-ranked 6-core revolver would take at least a minute to break it. She knew Anastasia was powerful, but from her aura, she also knew that for some reason, she couldn't use her full power. So she didn't think they would need to create 3 more isolation formations around the formation they just created. Anastasia shook her head at Ashley's doubtful voice and asked her to activate the formation once again. Although Ashley was confused, she didn't refuse and poured her energy into the formation once again. When Anastasia felt the formation was fully activated, she took a deep breath and her black eyes started to change. "Feel this," she said to Ashley as her pupils turned vertical in shape and their color changed from black to deep yellow, resembling the eyes of a beast. At the same time, she used the soul resonance skill and her aura started to increase. 2 black horns with red patterns grew on her head, her hands turned into sharp dragon's claws, and a long tail filled with sharp spikes protruded from her back, and without holding back, she fully released her aura. Rumble. As she released her aura after activating the soul resonance ability, the entire space isolation formation started to shake. Ashley, who was just a meter away from Anastasia, felt the aura released by her and her face turned pale white. Anastasia wasn't even targeting her, but she felt as if an immovable mountain was pressing on her, making it difficult for her to breathe. In just a few seconds, the isolation space formation that could even stop a peak rank 6 core evolver for a minute started to collapse. Feeling Anastasia's aura, Ashley was so terrified that she even stopped pouring her energy into the formation. Looking at Anastasia, she felt as if she were looking at a dangerous beast that could kill her with a snap of its fingers. Just when Ashley was on the verge of a mental breakdown, the terrifying aura that covered the entire space isolation formation disappeared and Anastasia's appearance returned to normal. After returning to her normal form, Anastasia looked at Ashley, who was trembling on the ground, and asked with a smile on her face. "Now, should we start creating 3 more formations around this one?" Hearing Anastasia, Ashley stood up on her trembling legs and shook her head with a serious look on her face. "Not 3, we are going to create 5 more, or I'm afraid you will destroy the entire formation with just one attack and our plan will fail." In the deeper area of the Black Mountain Range, Evan sat atop a giant rock, looking at the dozens of dead bodies of demonic goats that his shadow undeads were bringing for him from time to time. The area around him was shrouded in deep black demonic miasma, and because the bodies of the demonic goats were also filled with miasma, its density around him was increasing with each passing second. After waiting for a while, Evan saw Eclipse returning with 3 more demonic goats, placing their bodies in front of him. "Now there are 151 demonic goats here," Evan thought inwardly, looking at the mountain of demonic goat bodies before him. Most of the dead demonic goats that his shadow undeads brought ranged from F rank to B rank, with some occasionally reaching S rank, as it was very difficult for the demonic goats to reach rank 1. Evan's shadow undeads had been hunting them for nearly 6 hours, but none had encountered a rank 1 demonic goat. Seeing there were now more than 150 demonic goats in front of him, Evan took a deep breath and his eyes turned sharp. "Let's start," he said, and summoned a few of his shadow undeads, ordering them to search for the cores within the bodies of the demonic goats. In just a few minutes, his shadow undeads checked the bodies of all the demonic goats and found 33 cores. Evan frowned when he saw there were just 33 cores inside. "Hunt a few more," he sent a message to Kazil and the others who were still within the Black Mountain Range, asking them to hunt more demonic goats. Around 4 hours later, his shadow undeads returned with around 120 demonic goats. Similar to before, they looked for the cores, and this time, his luck was better than before as he found 37 cores. Now he had a total of 70 cores of the demonic goats, ranging from F rank to S rank. "These cores should be enough," Evan muttered with a serious look on his face and took a deep breath. He used the wind manipulation skill to hold all 70 cores in front of him and his eyes turned sharp. Using the growth link skill, he first took Necros's size manipulation skill and then Gabu's authority, reality bending. Using the size manipulation skill, he increased the size of his head, turning it into a giant balloon. At the same time, he activated reality bending authority. Evan used the reality bending authority for the first time in Chap 775. Reality bending authority. Upon activation, you can manipulate the probability of something happening to some extent. This authority can be used once every 2 months. The reality bending authority can be evolved if certain conditions are met. When Evan was a low-level hunter in the Aurora world and had just acquired his monarch physique, he once bought many F-rank cores in the hope of getting many new skills. But at that time, even after absorbing more than 100 F-rank cores, he did not get any skills. Evan was quite confused at that time, but later, he found out he couldn't get skills by absorbing cores that were lower ranked than his own core. This meant that, for his current self, if he wanted to acquire new skills, he had to absorb the cores of monsters that were mid-level rank 2 or above. The probability of acquiring skills by absorbing the cores of monsters below mid-level rank 2 was 0. However, to solve the problem of his slow absorption of the demonic miasma, Evan needed one of the skills of the demonic goats, who could freely live in the Black Mountain range despite the miasma. The skill that allowed the demonic goats to survive in the Black Mountain range was called miasma conversion. This passive skill automatically converted the demonic miasma that the demonic goats absorbed into energy that they could use to improve themselves. Evan wanted this passive skill so that he could handle the demonic miasma more easily and increase the conversion speed of the miasma into energy. At the same time, he felt that this skill would be of great help to him in the future because his race, Eltern, was somehow related to demons. Although Evan desired the miasma conversion skill, the probability of acquiring it from the cores of demonic goats, ranging from F to S, was 0. Therefore, he used the reality bending skill to improve the probability of obtaining the skill from low-level cores. Even after using the reality bending authority, Evan realized he could only increase the probability of getting the skill from 0 to just 2%. Although the probability was very low, he was not irritated but instead surprised, as he had thought he would only be able to increase it to 1% at best. Even though it's not high, it should be enough. Evan thought and tossed all 70 cores that he had collected from the demonic goats into his giant mouth at the same time. The moment Evan tossed the cores into his mouth, they turned into energy and rushed towards his primordial monarch core. The energy of the cores was absorbed by his primordial monarch core, and with his balloon-like face, Evan waited for the result. Around 3 seconds later, the energy of all the cores was fully absorbed by his primordial monarch core in the next second. You have acquired the passive skill, miasma conversion. A notification appeared in front of his eyes. Seeing the notification, Evan's lips arched upwards and he sighed in relief, having successfully obtained the skill. As Evan acquired the skill, he felt something changing within his body. It was a very strange feeling, and he couldn't describe it because it was the first time he felt his body changing somehow due to acquiring a skill. Just when Evan was wondering what was happening, another notification flashed in front of his eyes, surprising him. The synchronization rate between your race Eltern and the origin universe has increased by 1%. The synchronization between your race Eltern and the origin universe has increased by 1%. Current synchronization between your race Eltern and the origin universe, 62%. Evan was surprised when he saw the sudden notification in front of him. It increased just because I acquired a passive skill. Evan muttered in a low voice, wondering what the relationship was between the increased synchronization rate and the miasma conversion skill. Could it be because of the relationship between my race Eltern and the demons? Normally, only demons can handle the miasma. It is very hard for people of other races to handle the miasma unless their rank is very high. But if the concentration of miasma in a single place is very high, even the high-level core evolvers of other races wouldn't be able to handle it. For Evan, the density of the miasma in the Black Mountain range was not a problem since it wasn't to the point where it could affect him. But if the density of the miasma in the Black Mountain range had been 3 or 4 times greater than the current density, it would have been very difficult for him to handle it. However, after acquiring the passive skill miasma conversion, he felt as if he could easily handle any amount of miasma. It was like this skill had fundamentally changed his body, making it suitable to handle the demonic miasma. This synchronization thing always catches me off guard since I still don't know what the criteria are to increase its rate, Evan muttered while rubbing his temples and shook his head. He summoned back all of his shadow undeads and stopped using the size manipulation skill. The moment he stopped using the skill, his giant balloon-like head returned to normal, and he put away all the demonic goats inside his shadow storage. After putting away the demonic goats, he took a step forward and disappeared from the place he was standing. Around 5 kilometers away from his previous location, Evan appeared in an open area where the demonic miasma was even thicker than his last location. Looking at the demonic miasma, Around him, Evan took a deep breath and used the energy-devouring skill once again. As the thorn-filled vines came out of his palm and pierced the ground around him, the demonic miasma around him started to churn like seawater. The deep green vines glowed with a sharp light and started to absorb the churning miasma. For the first few seconds, the speed at which the devouring vines were converting the miasma into energy to increase the level of his core was similar to before. But as time passed, his passive skill miasma conversion started to work, and the conversion speed of the devouring vines dramatically increased. The churning sea of miasma within the Black Mountain range shook, and all the black miasma started to rush towards the devouring vines without stopping. Evan's speed of absorbing and converting the miasma into energy became so fast that he had to stop thinking about anything else and focus only on the energy that was rushing towards his core. Damn, I never thought just a single skill would bring such a dramatic change. Evan thought with a joyful look on his face and continued to absorb the miasma. In just 5 minutes, the churning sea of miasma in the few kilometers of the area around him thinned to the point that even people who were below C rank could enter there without any problem. I need to change the place, Evan muttered when he saw the miasma around him become very thin, and immediately changed his location, moving a few kilometers away. After changing his location, he once again used the energy-devouring skill, and similar to before, in just a few minutes, he absorbed all the miasma from that area as well. By absorbing the demonic miasma and turning it into pure energy, the rank of Evan's core continued to increase. Feeling the advancement of his core, Evan couldn't help but smile joyfully. The speed at which the rank of his core was increasing was tens of times faster than increasing it normally. I wonder what kind of face people who absorb the world essence while sitting in the same place like monks would make if they saw me increasing the rank of my core like this. Evan thought inwardly and once again changed his location. In the Black Mountain range, other than Evan, there were other people as well, who came there to catch demonic goats to earn some money by selling them, and they noticed the strange phenomenon happening within the deeper area of the Black Mountain range. Looking from a distance, it looked as if the sea of black miasma within the deeper area was being devoured by something, and the density of the miasma there was decreasing at a rapid speed. Although the people who came there were curious as to what was going on within the deeper area of the mountain range, they didn't dare to go there. Most of the people who came there were low level and just wanted to catch some demonic goats to earn some money, so they didn't care too much about the anomaly and continued their search for the demonic goats. Just like this, 2 days passed by. I still need a little more energy before I can reach the peak of rank 2. Evan, who was standing in the middle of a desolate area, muttered with a frown on his face. He looked around and saw that the Black Mountain range, which was previously shrouded in demonic miasma, now looked like a normal mountain range. It seems I can't reach the peak of rank 2 for the time being, Evan said, but he didn't look disappointed because he could feel that the miasma he had absorbed was slowly recovering and the Black Mountain range would return to its previous state in less than 15 days. There must be something in this Black Mountain range, otherwise, it would have been impossible for the demonic miasma that I absorbed to recover so quickly. He thought inwardly and wanted to look for the source of the miasma, but using his spiritual senses, he could feel that the disappearance of the miasma had attracted many people to the Black Mountain range, and it would not be good for him to stay there any longer. I will look for the source of this miasma after completing what we came here for, Evan said to himself, and disappeared from the Black Mountain range, going back towards the Magmara Kingdom. Leaving the Black Mountain range, Evan returned to the Magmara Kingdom. After arriving, he went to the hotel they had booked to meet with Anastasia and the others. He had spent 2 days in the Black Mountain range, so he assumed Anastasia, Ashley, and the others would have already returned after completing their tasks. However, when he returned to the hotel, he found that all 4 of them were still not back. Strange, they just needed to create 2 formations, so why aren't they back yet? Evan muttered to himself, wondering if all 4 of them had gone out for a walk after coming back. Thinking they might be out, he took out his communication crystal and tried calling Anastasia. But when he called her, he realized he couldn't contact her. Evan frowned when he wasn't able to contact her, but the frown on his face soon relaxed as he thought about something. Looks like she's inside a space isolation formation, he said to himself and shook his head. He knew that Anastasia's power was very high, so he didn't think she would encounter any danger. Moreover, she was with Silvin, Ashley, and Alaric. Other than Ashley, all three of them were ranked 6 core revolvers, so it was simply impossible for anyone to harm them with that kind of lineup. Moreover, Ashley's understanding of the law of space is very high, so it wouldn't be difficult for them to get away even if they met some kind of unforeseen circumstance, Evan thought and slumped down on his bed in his room. As he did, Allura came out of his soul space and sat on his stomach, looking at him with puppy eyes. Evan sighed when he saw this and looked at the table beside his bed. Pressing on top of the table, he summoned a holographic screen showing the different kinds of food the hotel had to offer. "Go ahead and order whatever you want," he said to Allura after activating the holographic screen. Seeing the images of the food on the menu, Allura immediately leapt towards it and started to order one dish after another. Evan looked at the small red-haired girl and wondered what kind of race Allura belonged to. From the small details that Azeroth spoke of, I can tell she used to be quite powerful since, according to him, she once terrorized the entire Origin universe. He thought inwardly, looking at Allura who was already drooling. Seeing her drooling, Evan suddenly thought of something and his expression turned strange. I didn't think about it before, but isn't Allura a weapon spirit? How can she eat food like normal people if Azeroth turned her into a weapon spirit? Evan had read a few things about weapon spirits, but none of the texts he had read ever mentioned that weapon spirits could eat like normal people. Is it normal, or is Allura special in this regard? He wondered and decided to ask Anastasia once she came back. Soon, the food Allura had ordered arrived on the table. The table had a small teleportation formation engraved on it so the hotel staff could send the food directly to their room. Seeing the table full of food, Allura's drool overflowed and she started to eat without hesitation. Seeing Allura eating like a hungry child who hadn't eaten anything for almost a week, Evan shook his head and asked her, "Allura, do you want to meet your Uncle Biscuit?" Hearing Evan, Allura stopped eating and furiously nodded her head with her mouth still stuffed with rice. "Are you trying to become a squirrel or something?" Evan laughed when he saw Allura's stuffed mouth and wiped the rice that was stuck to her face. "Since you want to meet him, we will go kidnap him after a few days and bring him back with us." The tomb of the ancient was near the boundless ocean, and when Azeroth expelled all the monsters and people from the tomb, they all appeared within the surroundings of the ocean. The Gehenna Empire was not far away from the boundless ocean, and since he arrived in the Magmara kingdom, he could feel his connection with Biscuit. Hearing Evan, Allura showed a joyful expression and continued to eat. In her mind, she was thinking she would finally get back her chef. Seeing Allura busy eating, Evan didn't disturb her any further and sat down on the bed. He looked at his status window and checked his current understanding of void energy. Current understanding of void energy, 27.96%. It had been almost a month since he came out of the tomb of the ancient, and he had focused on increasing his understanding of void energy. He didn't use the void crystals he found in the void space of the tomb, as he was planning to use them during the later stages. The more he increased his understanding of void energy, the harder it became to progress further. If he used them now, it would be a waste since they could be more useful during the later stages when increasing his understanding of void energy would be even more difficult. Although he didn't use the void crystals and just cultivated normally, he still increased his understanding of void energy by another 1.96%, which was quite fast considering he spent only 1 or 2 hours each day on it. Now I am just a little bit away from reaching the peak of rank 2. Once I reach the peak of rank 2, I will need to increase my understanding of void energy to 75% if I want to break through to rank 3, Evan muttered with a pondering look on his face and closed his eyes, deciding to increase his understanding of void energy for the rest of the time he had left before the auction. 2 days after Evan came back from the Black Mountain Range, Anastasia and the others also returned to the hotel. However, upon seeing that he was busy increasing his understanding of void energy, no one disturbed him. Just like this, the remaining days passed in the blink of an eye, and the day of the auction arrived. "Allura, stay inside my soul space for today and don't try to do anything, alright?" Evan said to Alora while patting her head. He was about to go to the auction house where the life water would be auctioned, and he knew many powerful people, including Anderson and Halus, would be there. He didn't want Alora to cause any trouble in their presence as she had done in the Black Mountain Range. Okay, father, Alora responded obediently upon hearing Evan. Although her mentality was somewhat similar to a child's, she also knew that today Evan and the others were going to do something important. After finishing the cake that Anastasia made for her, she silently went back inside Evan's soul space. Shall we go? Once Alora returned to his soul space, Evan looked at Anastasia, who was also munching on a cake. Okay, Anastasia nodded and quickly finished her cake. Once she finished, both of them left the hotel, heading towards the Blood Moon auction house in their fake appearances. Silvin, Ashley, and Alaric formed another group and went to the auction house ahead of them. They decided not to go together because even though they hid their auras, they wanted to stay cautious and avoid attracting attention. So, should we go and tame that snake bitch after this is over? Anastasia asked Evan while they were walking towards the auction house. Evan's mouth twitched uncontrollably when he heard Anastasia and he looked at her with a speechless expression. I say, do you think she is a normal snake monster that we can tame whenever we want? Anastasia snorted when she heard Evan and replied disdainful voice. Don't insult the normal snake monsters. Normal snakes at least have some dignity, but that snake bitch will start to wiggle her tail in front of you the moment you show power surpassing hers. Evan raised an eyebrow when he heard Anastasia's disdainful voice and asked curiously. You're speaking as if you've seen her submit to someone else before. Anastasia smirked when she heard Evan and looked at him with playful eyes. Seeing her playful look, Evan was taken aback and a thought came to his mind. Don't tell me, he muttered in a stunned voice, his mouth slightly open. Seeing Evan's stunned look, Anastasia nodded her head. Yes, that bitch once tried to mess with you in the past, and you bitch slapped her to the point that she kneeled in front of you and started to beg for mercy, she said while laughing happily as if she were remembering the best drama she had ever seen. Evan was completely speechless when he heard Anastasia and didn't know what to say. To think one of the monarchs would have this kind of personality. He muttered inwardly, thinking about Akasha, whom Anastasia was referring to as Snake Bitch. From some of the memories that I had seen in my dreams, I knew there was a problem between Akasha and Anastasia, but I didn't expect their enmity to run so deep that she even refused to address her by name. Evan shook his head, thinking about what had happened a few days ago after Anastasia came back from creating the space isolation formations. When Anastasia returned, Evan had shown her the shard of realm glyphs he had acquired and asked her if she knew anything about it. Unfortunately, Anastasia said realm glyphs were exclusive to monarch physique holders, so she didn't have any knowledge about them. Although she didn't know anything about the realm glyphs, she said other monarchs must have information about them. Thus, she suggested they should go and tame Akasha to get information about the realm glyphs. Although it's been a few days, Evan still remembered the sadistic smile Anastasia showed when she spoke about taming Akasha. I don't know why, but I have a feeling that poor Lamia is going to suffer quite a bit in the future. Evan thought to himself, looking at Anastasia, who was smiling strangely, apparently still thinking about what she would do with her after taming her. Damn, no matter what kind of race they belong to, women are all scary. He thought and decided never to annoy Anastasia because her sadistic smile gave him a very creepy feeling. When Anastasia noticed Evan was looking at her strangely because of the way she was smiling, she coughed in embarrassment and decided to change the subject. Let's stop talking about that bitch for now. I recently received news from my essence clone that is inside the Shadow Realm that the army of demons who were stationed outside the Shadow Realm, ready to launch an attack, started to retreat. Evan wasn't surprised by this news as he already expected the demons to stop their plan of attacking the Shadow Realm for the time being because of their situation with the Dragon Islands. What about the dragons? There were also some dragons who were going to join the demons in the attack, right? Anastasia nodded and said with a smile, they were indeed planning to join the demons, but because of recent events, all the dragons who were planning to join the attack left as well and returned to the Dragon Islands. I see. Evan nodded hearing Anastasia, Thinking now that the demons and dragons were backing away from the Shadow Realm, he could go there without much problem. As Evan was contemplating whether he should go to the Shadow Realm, they arrived at the Blood Moon auction house, where the auction was going to be held. There are a lot of people, huh? Anastasia muttered in a low voice, looking at the crowd heading towards the auction house. You were the one who asked that guy to spread the news about the life water, so it's natural there will be a lot of people coming for the auction, Evan said with a shake of his head when he heard her. It was necessary to spread the news about the life water to proceed with our plan. Anastasia said and looked in a certain direction. Look, one of the lambs is already here to get slaughtered. Evan followed Anastasia's gaze and saw a tall man with pale white skin coming towards the auction house. Looks like this guy has lost his appetite for blood because of the death of his son, Evan whispered to Anastasia when he saw Anderson's pale white skin as if he were lacking blood in his body. Anastasia chuckled when she heard Evan and didn't say anything. Ignoring Anderson, both of them went towards the VIP entrance of the auction house and, after showing the invitations that Anastasia got from Leopold, they entered the auction house. Upon entering, an employee of the auction house quickly approached them and led them towards their VIP room. Silvin and the others came before us, right? Are they already in their room? Evan asked Anastasia using the sound transmission. Hearing Evan, Anastasia tried to use her spiritual senses but found the walls of the auction house were protected by a formation, and she couldn't scan the entire auction house without using the soul resonance skill. Anastasia told Evan about the formations and asked him to contact them using communication crystal after going to their room. Soon, the employee brought them to their auction room and left after Evan and Anastasia went inside. The room was relatively big, with the front wall made of glass, allowing them to see the auction venue. Evan walked in front of the glass wall and saw thousands of people participating in the auction. The number of people is even higher than I initially thought. Evan muttered to himself as he looked at the crowd. I bet most of these people are here just to watch the show, knowing it's impossible for them to get the life water, Anastasia said lightly and sat down on the leather sofa. Have you guys prepared the formations in the rooms of those two? Evan asked as he walked towards Anastasia and sat down as well. Leopold came to the Magmara Kingdom along with Anderson 2 days ago. With his help, it wasn't difficult to prepare the formations without anyone noticing, Anastasia said with a smirk, tossing a grape from the table into her mouth. It would have been impossible for us to proceed with our plan without the help of this slave guy. He is really a hard-working person, Evan said with a shake of his head and smiled at Leopold's misery. It was his own fault that he turned into a slave. If he hadn't messed with me when he came to meet Alaric, I wouldn't have placed the gloom puppet curse on him, Anastasia said with a shrug, showing no care for Leopold. Evan shook his head at Anastasia's nonchalant voice and took out his communication crystal. He called Ashley to find out if they were already here, and once the call connected, Ashley confirmed they were in their room. She also informed him that when they arrived earlier, they saw Halus, the mid-level rank 6 demon. Hearing Ashley, Evan was surprised and informed her they also saw Anderson when they arrived earlier. Seems like both of the lambs are already here, Evan heard Alaric's amused voice from the other end of the crystal, and he could imagine Alaric already rubbing his hands in anticipation. By the way, when should I activate the formation? The moment they enter the room or at the end of the auction? Ashley suddenly asked. Of course, activate it at the end of the auction. After all, we need one of them to buy the life water before we can proceed with our plan, Evan said matter-of-factly. Alright, Ashley replied and ended the call. Once Ashley ended the call, Evan put away his communication crystal and, similar to Anastasia, started to eat the spirit fruits on the table. While eating the fruit, he could feel a hungry gaze on him, but he couldn't figure out where it was coming from. Inside Evan's soul space, Alora was looking at Evan and Anastasia with a look of dissatisfaction on her face. She also wanted to eat fruits, but because Evan told her not to do anything, she could only watch them with a pout on her face. While Evan was thinking about when the auction would begin, Anastasia suddenly stopped eating the fruits and looked at the door of their room. What's wrong? Evan asked in confusion when he saw Anastasia looking at the door. Nothing, Anastasia shook her head hearing Evan and stopped looking at the door. I just felt the presence of that enslaved vampire, but it seems he is going to stay with Anderson during the auction, she said and once again started to eat fruits. He will be staying with Anderson. Evan raised an eyebrow when he heard Anastasia. It won't affect the formation, right? Don't worry, the formation wouldn't be affected just because there is an extra person in the room, Anastasia said with a shake of her head. Evan nodded, hearing Anastasia, and waited for the auction to start. Around half an hour later, from the glass wall, he saw a male vampire, neatly dressed in a black suit appear on the auction stage. Welcome to our auction, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Bryce, and I will be your auctioneer for today. The vampire spoke with a bow and smiled at the audience. There will be a few other items that will be auctioned before the life water, right? Evan asked Anastasia while Bryce was introducing himself. Yeah, I already saw the auction catalog when I came here to create the formations in the rooms of those two, but there are no remarkable items among the ones that will be auctioned, Anastasia said in a bored voice as she looked at Bryce, who finally started the auction. Evan wasn't surprised when he heard Anastasia, as he knew this whole auction was just a trap to lure Anderson and Halus, so it was natural that other than the life water, there were no other remarkable items being auctioned. Let's hope everything will go according to our plan and there won't be any unforeseen circumstances. Evan thought to himself and looked at the 5 elves, who were sitting at the very back of the auction venue. Are you interested in that sword? Anastasia asked when she saw Evan looking at a beginner-level rank 3 greatsword that was being auctioned. No, I was looking at it because this sword looks somewhat similar to one that I have, Evan said while looking at the deep red sword that resembled the doomed sword he used in the Tomb of the Ancient. Besides, he turned his head towards Anastasia and asked with a smile on his face, do you think I need these low-level weapons when I have a daughter who can turn into a badass halberd? Anastasia was speechless when she heard Evan and had no words to refute. She had felt the power of the halberd of destruction, so she knew very well just how broken the powers hidden inside it were. The auction continued without any problems, and even though many interesting items were being auctioned, Evan and Anastasia didn't show any interest in them. Silvin bought a few things that could be used by the dryads, but because he had spent 1.5 billion high-level essence stones when Octavius created the World Core pill, he didn't buy too many things due to a lack of funds. Sigh, to think I would feel so poor just after buying some low-level things. Silvin muttered in a depressed voice, feeling that Evan was right in calling Octavius a loan shark who turned him into a poor old man. Don't be depressed, you will soon become a rich old master once we succeed in our plan, Alaric said in a comforting voice and patted Silvin's shoulder. Silvin nodded his head, hearing Alaric, and started to tell him how his home budget decreased because of losing 1.5 billion essence stones. Alaric listened attentively and also shared how he had to use a large amount of resources to control the monsters of the Dark Forest and how he also faced budget crises in the past. Ashley looked at the 2 old men who were competing over who was poorer and rubbed her forehead, feeling she should have gone with Evan and Anastasia. She was just a 1,000-year-old young girl. In her opinion, she was too young to hear the bullshit of these 2 old men. Fortunately, Ashley didn't have to listen to the complaints of the 2 old men for long because the final item of the auction finally appeared. Now, for the final item, as you all already know, we have the life water, the auctioneer announced, and a woman brought a small transparent bottle filled with light green liquid. Seeing the green liquid in the bottle, the people present in the auction venue exploded into excited discussions because even though the liquid was inside a bottle made of special materials, they could still feel the boundless life force contained within it. Finally, when Anderson saw the life water, his blood-red eyes glowed and he glanced towards the side wall of his room, looking straight in Halfus's direction, who was in the room next to him. Although the rooms of the auction house were protected by formations that prevented others from spying on other people, those formations couldn't stop a rank 6 core revolver, so Anderson was easily able to see Halfus. Halfus felt Anderson looking in his direction, so he also glanced towards him but didn't say anything. Seeing Halfus calm, Anderson snorted inwardly and looked back at the auction venue. Because of the appearance of the life water, the entire auction venue was abuzz with heated discussions. Amid the chaos, No one noticed that 5 elves, whom Evan had met in the Black Mountain Range, silently stood up and left the auction venue. Evan smiled slightly when the elves left the auction venue and put away the communication crystal he had just used to send a message to Laval. Anastasia noticed what Evan did and smiled slightly. "You are really determined to turn the Gehenna Empire upside down, huh?" she said. "I mean, why not?" Evan shrugged his shoulders. "Since we are going to do this, we should do it in a way that will greatly benefit us." "Are you talking about Saroth?" Anastasia asked with a raised eyebrow. Evan smirked and, instead of answering, asked her another question. "What do you think Saroth, who absolutely hates Baphomet and the demons of the Gehenna Empire, will do when he hears about what we did here?" For a moment, Anastasia was surprised by Evan's question, but soon a look of understanding flashed across her face and she smiled slightly. Seeing the smile on her face, Evan leaned back on the couch and asked lightly, "By the way, all the essence stones that these people are going to pay for the life water will come into our pockets, right? I was the one who provided them with the life water, so of course, the essence stones would come into our pocket," Anastasia replied while rolling her eyes. "I didn't ask before, but how did you get so much life water? I heard it's extremely rare, and elves don't sell it to outsiders." Anastasia tossed a grape into her mouth and replied in a light voice, "I exchanged some items with Anastasia long ago. In return for those items, I received around 1.5 liters of life water from her." Evan raised an eyebrow when he heard Anastasia and suddenly remembered she had told him that she was injured in the past and only recovered after the evolution of the Shadow Realm. "Did you exchange the life water to heal your injuries?" Hearing Evan, Anastasia shook her head and said in an embarrassed voice, "It wasn't for healing my injuries. I actually thought about using the life water in cooking, but the result was a total disaster. Even after experimenting with nearly 1 liter of life water, I was never able to create a good dish using it." Evan, he opened his mouth to say something, but no words came out. In the end, he decided to keep his mouth shut and looked back at the auction venue, where Halus and Anderson had already started to compete for the life water. The life water contains a boundless life force and has exceptional healing abilities. Just by using a few drops, even a peak rank 2 core evolver who is on the brink of death can be fully healed in the blink of an eye, which is even more potent than a high-grade rank 3 healing pill. The higher the rank of a core evolver, the harder it is for them to heal themselves in case of serious injuries. For core evolvers above rank 4, it is very hard for them to heal themselves using healing pills. This is similar to how Halus wasn't able to heal Rom, beginner level rank 6 demon, using a rank 5 healing pill. Other than stopping his bleeding and stabilizing his condition, the rank 5 pill didn't have much effect on him because he was a rank 6 core evolver. Currently, the situation in the Gehenna Empire is very dire. Not only do they have to deal with the Dragon Islands, but even the nations under the control of the Gehenna Empire are showing signs of restlessness. Most of the kingdoms under the control of the Gehenna Empire are ruled by demons, and after receiving the news that Baphomet is dead, the ambitions of these demons are surging and they want to break free from the Empire's control. Although the high officials of the Gehenna Empire can control the situation for the time being, they know it won't be long before some demons lose their patience and start to act. In the current time, when they don't know whether Baphomet is alive or not, the most important thing for Halus and other high-level demons is to preserve as much power as possible. Raoul was a rank 6 core evolver and one of the pillars of the Empire. In a situation where they are on the brink of war and the kingdoms under them are showing signs of restlessness, they can't let him lie in bed for tens of years before he fully heals. When it comes to healing, life water is one of the best things in Utopia, so it is natural that Halus doesn't want to miss it. If he could get the life water, it would be a piece of cake for him to heal Rom. As you all know, the final item for today's auction is life water, Bryce said as he showed the bottle filled with half a liter of life water to the audience. The starting bid for the life water is 100 million high-level essence stones, and the increment will be 1 million high-level essence stones each. 150 million. The moment Bryce finished speaking, a cold voice rang out from one of the VIP rooms. Evan nearly choked on the fruit he was eating and looked at the auction venue with an astonished look on his face. He had thought the starting price of the life water would be around 50 million or something, not much different than the Enlightenment Stone, but everything that was happening was completely out of his expectation. Isn't the price of life water too high? Shouldn't it be around 40 or 50 million at best? Evan said to Anastasia with a stunned look on his face. Anastasia rolled her eyes when she heard Evan and explained to him. The price of life water depends on its quantity. If there were just a few drops of life water, the price would be just a few million high-level essence stones, but there is half a liter of life water in that bottle, so it's normal that it would be at least a few 100 million essence stones. Hearing Anastasia, Evan felt it made sense that half a liter of life water would fetch such a price, but he was still shocked that the price would reach over 100 million in a single step. Moreover, Anderson and Halus still hadn't started bidding, so he didn't know how much the life water would fetch. 180 million. Another person sitting in the VIP room, from the Beastkin race, bid. The people in the venue were shocked because most of the people sitting in the auction venue were not high-level core evolvers, so it was quite shocking for them to see the bid reaching 180 million high-level essence stones in just a few seconds. Anderson's eyes were cold as he watched people increasing the bid for life water, making it reach 210 million in just a minute. 250 million. Suddenly, a dominating voice rang out and Anderson looked at Halus, who finally decided to take action. When people heard Halfus's voice, many of them immediately decided to stop bidding. Halus was a mid-level rank 6 core evolver, and they were inside the Gehenna Empire. Among the people who came to buy life water, most of them were rank 3 or rank 4, and they didn't want to mess with a rank 6 core evolver who could kill them without them even realizing it. 250 million high-level essence stones. Anyone willing to bid higher? Bryce asked in a loud voice, looking at the people in the auction venue. Although there were many people who wanted to bid, they thought it was not worth messing with a rank 6 demon in their own empire, so most of the people hesitated and cursed Halus because before coming to the auction, they never expected a rank 6 core evolver would participate. Just when Bryce was thinking no one was going to increase the bid, Anderson finally opened his mouth. 300 million. Halus glanced in Anderson's direction with his black eyes glowing menacingly, and he also increased the bid. 310 million. Anderson smiled coldly when he heard Halfus's bid and his indifferent voice rang out. 350 million. Damn, these guys are really going all out, Evan muttered in a shocked voice as he couldn't believe the price had reached 300 million in just a few minutes. He looked at Anastasia, who was eating fruits leisurely, and asked in a curious voice. Do you think Anderson will successfully win? Anastasia nodded her head and replied with a smirk. Because of my order, that slave vampire told Anderson that he would give him a 30% discount in the end, so there is no way Anderson is going to lose since in the end, he will only need to pay 70% of the amount that he is bidding. Evan was speechless when he heard Anastasia and shook his head. She really planned everything to make sure nothing goes wrong, he thought to himself and continued to watch the show. After some time, just as Anastasia expected, once Anderson bid 500 million high-level essence stones, Halus didn't raise the bid any further as 500 million was a huge sum even for him. More importantly, the capital of the Gehenna Empire was recently destroyed by the Light Dragon and it was still under construction. As if that wasn't enough, they also had to train new troops because of the war against the Dragon Islands, so he couldn't carelessly spend so many essence stones. Seeing that Halus wasn't bidding anymore, Bryce finally closed the bid and the life water was sold to Anderson. Let's go, we don't need to wait anymore, Anastasia said once Bryce closed the bid and both of them immediately left the room. After leaving the auction room, Anastasia and Evan quickly walked towards Halfus's room. They were going there because they didn't want Halus or Anderson to leave the auction room, as it would affect their plan. It wasn't difficult for Evan and Anastasia to find Halfus's room since Anastasia already knew about his room because of Leopold. As they were heading towards Halfus's room, they came across Ashley, Alaric, and Silvin, who were going towards Anderson's room. Because the rooms of both Halus and Anderson were next to each other, all 5 of them walked together. The area around the VIP rooms was completely empty, with no sign of employees, which was quite strange because, during the auction, an employee would always stand outside the VIP room in case the person inside the room had any questions about the item being auctioned. The reason there were no employees was naturally because of Leopold, who had already ordered people to stay away from the area where Halus and Anderson were. The employees were actually grateful that they were not assigned to Halus and Anderson, as serving a rank 6 core revolver is totally nerve-wracking for those low-level employees. This situation didn't raise any suspicion either, since normally, rank 6 core revolvers act all haughty and don't like other people disturbing them. "Are you nervous?" Evan asked, using sound transmission while looking at Alaric and Silvin. "A bit, but I don't think it will be a problem for us to take care of that vampire who reached rank 6 not long ago," Alaric replied without looking at him and continued. "Besides, Silvin is also at the peak of beginner level rank 6, and his controlling abilities are very good, so I don't think there will be any problem." Evan nodded, hearing them, and looked at Ashley. "Are you going with them?" "Yes," Ashley replied and glanced at Anastasia from the corner of her eye. "I don't think she will need my help, so it's better for me to go with them just in case something unexpected happens." Although it's been around 10 days, Ashley still couldn't forget the power Anastasia showed her during the time they created the space isolation formations. In her eyes, going with Anastasia would be useless since she wouldn't need her help. But if she went with Silvin and Alaric, although she is a rank 5 core revolver, far from being able to defeat a rank 6 core revolver like Anderson, she felt she could still help them to some extent using her space abilities. Soon, they were just a few meters away from the rooms where Halus and Anderson were. Just before they reached the rooms, a black light came out of Anastasia's body and seeped inside the bodies of Ashley, Silvin, and Alaric. "Remember to finish him off in half an hour. After half an hour, the effect of the skill I used will wear off, and there is a chance they will see through your identities," Anastasia reminded Ashley and the others in a serious voice, and they nodded their heads. Seeing them nodding seriously, Anastasia smiled and stopped in front of Halfus's room along with Evan. Ashley and the others walked to the room next to them, and after nodding at each other, they entered the rooms at the same time. When the door of his room suddenly opened, Halus, who was lost in his thoughts after not being able to get the life water, raised his head and looked at Evan and Anastasia, who entered with narrowed eyes. He was a rank 6 core revolver, so he knew no normal person would enter his room bizarrely, especially without knocking. But looking at the two people who entered his room, Halus could tell that not only were they not afraid of him, they were even looking at him in disdain. Feeling something was not right, Halfus's eyes turned cold, and he stood up. "Who are you?" he asked as his aura slowly started to surge. His black hair started to turn purple, and his cold handsome face turned somewhat demonic. Although Halus could have directly attacked them, he did not do so because, with his current rank, he could easily tell that the people in front of him were not normal, especially Anastasia, who was giving him a sense of extreme danger. Although Anastasia's aura was way weaker than his, he could feel there was something wrong with her. As for Evan, who looked like a noble elf, because he was wearing the abyssal shroud earring, Halus couldn't determine his rank, but he did not sense any kind of danger from him, which reassured him that he must be using an artifact to hide his aura. As expected from a demon, he wants to attack you even before listening to what the other party has to say, Anastasia said while shaking her head when she saw Halfus's action. Although she did not come here with good intentions, she still felt that before showing hostility, Halus should have at least tried to understand what was going on. When Evan heard what Anastasia said, he rolled his eyes because, in his opinion, Halfus's reaction was completely natural. If someone suddenly entered their private room without saying anything, it is obvious the room owner wouldn't show hospitality. Hearing Anastasia's remark, Halus frowned, and his face turned even colder. Anastasia didn't care about Halfus's cold reaction and walked forward, sitting down on a sofa just 5 meters away from him. From this distance, Halus was sure that he could kill Anastasia in the blink of an eye, and even if she had some kind of trump card, injuring her seriously wouldn't be a problem. Just when Halus was thinking about killing or injuring her seriously so that he could use soul search on her to find out what was going on, Anastasia smiled as she felt her communication crystal vibrate. "Well, time's up," she said in a soft voice, and the next second, a space teleportation formation lit up under their feet, covering the entire room, and all three of them disappeared. Far from the Magmara kingdom, inside a space isolation formation, 3 silver lights flashed, and Halus, Anastasia, and Evan appeared there. Because of the forceful teleportation, Halus was furious, and as soon as he appeared inside the space isolation formation, he distanced himself from Anastasia and looked around cautiously, thinking it was an ambush. But after surveying his surroundings, Halus realized that besides the 3 of them, there was no one else inside the space isolation formation. His spiritual senses easily covered the entire space, revealing only barren land and nothing else within the formation. My spiritual senses can't go outside of the space isolation formation. In less than a second, Halus understood that he was inside a powerful space formation, completely cut off from the outside world. Who are you? Are you from the Dragon Islands? Realizing he was trapped in a space formation, Halus' face turned grim and he asked in a cold voice. Other than the Dragon Islands, the demon couldn't think of anyone else who would attack him for no reason. Hearing Halus, Anastasia smiled and released some of her dragon aura. Feeling Anastasia's dragon aura, Halus' face turned extremely cold, and his eyes blazed with hatred. Do you dragons really want to start an all-out war? He shouted in a cold voice as golden lightning started to crackle around him. War? Anastasia sneered when she heard Halus. Do you think you weaklings are qualified to go to war against us dragons? The moment we dragons make a move, it won't be a war. It will be a pure slaughter of demonkind. You? Halus' face turned extremely gloomy upon hearing Anastasia's provoking words, and a murderous look flashed in his eyes. While Halus was glaring at Anastasia, Evan suddenly thought of something and sent a message to her. Anastasia raised an eyebrow when she heard Evan and looked at him in confusion. Why do you want to go there? I just thought of something. If I succeed, it will be of great benefit to us, Evan said in a low voice as his eyes flickered with excitement. Anastasia looked at Evan for a few seconds before nodding her head. Don't do anything reckless after going there. Evan rolled his eyes when he heard Anastasia and replied in a calm voice. I know my limits. I will take action from a distance. As if you knew your limits, you wouldn't have dared to meddle in the fight of ranked 6 core evolvers. Anastasia said and paused. After a moment, she asked in a low voice. You don't want to see me beat the hell out of this guy? Evan was speechless when he heard Anastasia's question and asked while sending a message to Ashley. Do you think I am some kind of psycho who likes to watch people getting beaten by someone? You are not. Anastasia was surprised when she heard Evan and looked at him in confusion. Evan's mouth twitched when he saw Anastasia's surprised look and decided to ignore the female dragon. Seeing Evan wasn't responding, Anastasia stopped looking at him, shifting her gaze towards Halus, whose anger was already on the verge of exploding from being ignored by them. You are leaving from here. Aren't you worried that I will lose to him or be seriously injured? Although Anastasia's voice was calm, Evan could feel a slight trembling in it, as if she was nervous about his response. Hearing her question, Evan was silent for a moment. He wasn't stupid or dense, so he could easily recognize her feelings for him. Since coming out of the tomb, he had spent most of his time with her in Allura, and it was the most peaceful and relaxed period of his life. Since the moment he was transmigrated to Aurora World, he was either fighting or trying to become stronger, without any friends or close ones to talk to, so the time he spent with her was quite valuable to him. Suddenly, a silver light started to cover Evan's body. Seeing the silver light, he knew his message had reached Ashley, and she was teleporting him away. Realizing he would soon be teleported, he sighed and walked in front of Anastasia. My answer to your question about whether I am worried about you getting injured is a big no, as I am sure this demon is just a small fry in front of you. He said to her in a calm voice and smiled slightly. But still, he stepped forward and lightly kissed her forehead. Be careful and don't get your ass kicked by him. As Evan finished speaking, his body was completely covered in silver light, and he disappeared from the space isolation formation. Anastasia stood in the same place with a dumbfounded look on her face, as if her mind had stopped working. Like a puppet, she slowly raised her stiff hand and touched her forehead with a blank look on her face. After a moment, Her mind finally processed everything that had just happened, and her eyes opened wide in shock. These two foo curs. Halus was enraged that not only had he been forcefully teleported inside a space isolation formation, but the people who did this were also completely ignoring him as if he didn't exist. I am going to Fu King kill you, Halus roared in anger, and his body started to change. His handsome face transformed into the face of a bull, his eyes turned deep red in color, and two sharp horns grew on both sides of his head. His body bulged up, and his height increased to 3 meters as a terrifying aura exploded outward from his body. Even though Halus was releasing a terrifying aura, Anastasia didn't pay attention to him and just continued to look at the space blankly. Seeing that Anastasia was completely unaffected by his aura, Halus' red eyes blazed, and he swung his arm towards her. As he swung his arm towards Anastasia, crackle, golden lightning flashed around his bull-like body, and roar, a giant monster made of golden lightning that looked like a Kirin shot towards her. The lightning Kirin was as fast as light and arrived in front of Anastasia in an instant. Seeing the lightning Kirin about to engulf her, Halus smiled widely, but just before the Kirin struck her. Boom! Ha 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 ha! A terrifying aura erupted from Anastasia's body, and she started to laugh as if she had gone mad. Rumble! The entire space isolation formation started to tremble under the pressure released by Anastasia, and the lightning Kirin was instantly destroyed. Thud! Under the pressure emanating from Anastasia's body, Halus was forced to his knees, and a look of horror flashed on his bull-like face as he looked at Anastasia, who was laughing while releasing a terrifying black aura. What in the world is wrong with this woman? He muttered in a trembling voice, as he felt the aura coming out of Anastasia's body continue to grow stronger. With a look of utter fear, Halus stared at Anastasia with his eyes wide open. She did not make any move, but just the aura emanating from her body made it impossible for him to even lift a finger. He was a mid-level ranked 6-core evolver and was certain that even a peak ranked 6-core evolver wouldn't be able to surpass him like this, but the power coming from Anastasia was on a completely different level. It's like I am in front of His Majesty, Halus thought with a pale look on his bull-like face as he remembered the power shown by Baphomet in the past. After laughing like a psycho for almost a full minute, Anastasia finally regained her composure and looked at Halus with a wide grin on her face. It's a pity that Eldracar asked me not to kill you, but well, I can still break some of your bones. She said with a smile on her face and took a step forward, instantly appearing in front of Halus, who was on his knees. Eldracar. Anastasia's voice wasn't low, so Halus easily heard her. Thinking his earlier guess was correct and that Anastasia was from the Dragon Islands, his eyes blazed with hatred, and he lifted his head with difficulty, looking at Anastasia, who was in front of him. Why are you dragons attacking the Gehenna Empire? He asked in a hoarse voice. Anastasia smiled coldly when she heard Halus and replied in a simple voice, because we want to. The moment Anastasia finished speaking, Halus roared loudly, and a dark purple axe appeared in his hand. As the axe appeared in his hand, Halus' bull-like body was engulfed in golden lightning, and the pressure he felt from Anastasia's aura disappeared. Die! The demon roared madly, and the moment he regained control over his body, he swung the dark purple axe towards Anastasia, wanting to kill her in a single move. Anastasia looked at the dark purple axe covered in golden lightning coming towards her head and raised her hand in front of her head to block it. Seeing Anastasia trying to block his axe with just her hand, a wide grin appeared on Halus' bull-like face and he sneered. Stupid, he thought inwardly, and his axe came into contact with Anastasia's hand. Halus thought that the moment his high-grade rank 5 axe would touch her hand, it would be chopped cleanly, but to his shock. Clang! When his axe collided with Anastasia's hand, the sound of metal clashing against metal rang out, and Anastasia was pushed back slightly. Halus' eyes opened wide in utter shock as he didn't expect his attack, which could easily kill even a beginner-level ranked 6-core evolver, would just push Anastasia back. Just when Halus was thinking about what was wrong, he noticed Anastasia's hands were covered in black scales, and her previous black eyes turned deep yellow, vertical in shape. 2 horns grew on top of her head, and a tail filled with sharp spikes came out of her back. At the same time, her aura became even more powerful than before, and even with the support of a peak rank 5 weapon, Halus felt his body becoming heavy. Is this your world form? Halus asked with a look of horror on his face. His giant round eyes nearly popped out of their sockets because of the terrifying pressure coming from her body. World form. Anastasia looked at Halus in disdain and sneered. This is my normal dragon battle form. Do you think you are qualified for me to use my world form just to deal with a small fry like you? Halus was even more shocked when he heard Anastasia, but before he could say anything. Boom! His bull-like face was suddenly planted into the ground. Due to the impact, the ground inside the space isolation formation collapsed, and a giant crater tens of thousands of kilometers wide appeared. There. Although there were 6 space isolation formations that Anastasia and Ashley created to ensure nothing went wrong, all 6 formations trembled as if they would shatter at any moment. Anastasia, who pressed Halus' face to the ground, frowned when she noticed the trembling formations and clicked her tongue in annoyance. She looked at Halus, whose bull-like face was completely disfigured, and took away his storage ring. Halus opened his mouth to say something but suddenly coughed out blood because all of his internal organs were shaken due to Anastasia's simple attack. Just what kind of monster is she? He thought and felt a fear like never before. Anastasia didn't care about what Halus was thinking and scanned his body using her spiritual senses to see if there was any artifact on his body that could record what happened here. The space isolation formation Ashley created was very high level, and other than special devices like the one Evan used to send a message to Ashley earlier, no other communication device could send any information outside. Anastasia wanted to make sure that Halus didn't have anything that would allow him to show others what happened here. Using her spiritual senses, she didn't find anything on Halus, but she didn't act carelessly. Her deep yellow eyes glowed and without any mercy, she punched Halus again. As Anastasia's fist connected, deep black power surged from her body, enveloping Halus entirely. As the black power covered him, all his artifacts, including the armor he wore, turned to dust. Simultaneously, the force of her punch invaded his body, shattering his bones, injuring his organs, and destroying any soul artifacts hidden within him. Arg! Halus screamed in agony as Anastasia's power ravaged his artifacts and injured his soul. The excruciating pain of his shattered bones and damaged organs was so intense that he immediately lost consciousness. Anastasia looked at the bleeding, unconscious Halus and took a deep breath. So the demons of the current era are like this, she muttered with a shake of her head. So disappointing. Although Anastasia was using the soul resonance skill, which allowed her to use some of her true powers, she still couldn't utilize her whole strength. Even so, she had no trouble defeating Halus, which left her slightly disappointed as she had hoped for a good fight after a long time. I hope other ranked 6 core evolvers are not like him, or it will be pretty boring to beat them up, Anastasia said to herself and stopped using the soul resonance skill. As she stopped using the skill, her aura rapidly diminished and her face turned slightly pale. Despite her pallor, Anastasia didn't care much and extended her hand forward. A suction force emanated from her hand, gathering the lingering aura from the surroundings and completely erasing traces of her power. Simultaneously, she collected Halus' aura as well, but instead of erasing it, she looked at it with a smile on her face. After collecting Halus' aura, she glanced at him one last time before she disappeared from the space isolation formation. Inside a space isolation formation, 5 silver lights flashed, and Anderson, Leopold, Silvin, Alaric, and Ashley appeared there. Similar to Halus, upon being forcefully teleported away, Anderson also thought it was an ambush and immediately used his spiritual senses to survey his surroundings, only to find out he was inside a powerful space isolation formation. Who are you? Anderson asked Alaric and the others in a cold voice, looking at them with a frown on his face. Similar to Evan and Anastasia, Alaric and others were also using their fake appearances. Ashley and Silvin appeared as normal humans, while Alaric had the appearance of a beastkin that he had used to meet Anastasia and others in the restaurant. Moreover, although they were using normal skills to change their appearances, Anderson, a rank 6 core evolver, still couldn't see through them because of the skill Anastasia had used on them earlier. Because of this skill, even without artifacts like the Abyssal Shroud, it was still easy for them to conceal their true identities. When Alaric heard Anderson's question, asking who they were, he replied in an indifferent voice. Someone who is going to die doesn't need to know who we are. As Alaric spoke, he released his aura of a mid-level rank 6 core evolver. Silvin also didn't hold back and released his aura of a beginner-level rank 6 core evolver. Feeling Silvin and Alaric's auras, Anderson's pupils contracted to the size of needles, and a grim look appeared on his face. From Silvin and Alaric's auras, Anderson could easily tell that both of them were far stronger than him. He was a beginner-level rank 6 vampire, but he had advanced to rank 6 not long ago, so compared to Silvin and Alaric, who had become rank 6 core evolvers thousands of years ago, he was still quite weak. Although Anderson felt his situation was not good, he did not lose his composure and asked in a low voice. "Are you here because of the life water? If yes, I can give half of the life water to you." In his opinion, other than life water, he couldn't think of anything else that would force 2 rank 6 core evolvers to take action against him. He had half a liter of life water, and to bring back his son to life, he only needed around half of it, so he was ready to give them half of the life water. Life water. Silvin smiled mockingly when he heard Anderson and didn't say anything else. Seeing their mocking smiles, something came to Anderson's mind, and his eyes narrowed. This life water was a trap from the beginning, he thought, and suddenly, Poochie, the sound of flesh being pierced by something rang out inside the space isolation formation, and Anderson's eyes opened wide in shock. Cough. He coughed out a mouthful of blood and looked down, only to see a blade had pierced his heart from behind. Like a puppet, Anderson turned his stiff neck to look behind and saw Leopold looking at him without any expression on his face. "Leopold, you," a look of anger flashed on Anderson's face, and he wanted to kill Leopold, but before he could do anything, Leopold pulled back the blade and with a flash of silver light, he disappeared from behind him. Cough. Anderson coughed out another mouthful of blood and turned to look at Ashley, who had just used her space ability to teleport Leopold away. Otherwise, with his meager power, Leopold would have been squashed to death by Anderson without resistance. "I am poisoned." Although his heart was destroyed and his aura had considerably dropped, Anderson was still far from death. His blood was flowing within his body at full speed, and his heart was regenerating at a speed visible to the naked eye. But even though his heart was regenerating, his face was still grim because he could feel a powerful poison running through his body. During a normal situation, it would not have been difficult for him to expel the poison from his body using his blood skills, but currently, he was facing 2 rank 6 enemies and was certain they wouldn't give him any chance to heal himself. And just as he had expected, the moment Leopold was teleported away by Ashley, Silvin took action. The ground beneath Anderson's feet collapsed and hundreds of thick green vines shot out, trying to bind him. As the vines tried to bind him, Anderson sneered, and his entire body melted into blood, taking the shape of a strange entity that looked like a mass of blood. When the vines came into contact with Anderson, who had turned into a mass of blood, they passed through him without being able to injure him. "If you think you can beat me using these cheap tricks, then all of you are dreaming," Anderson shouted to Alaric and the others as hundreds of glowing blood bullets covered the sky of the space isolation formation. Each of the blood bullets that appeared in the sky was releasing a terrifying aura as if a single bullet could destroy the entire Magmara kingdom. When Ashley and Leopold saw the blood bullets that appeared in the sky, their faces changed because although both of them were rank 5 core evolvers, they felt they would be seriously injured or, in the worst case, die if they got hit by even a single bullet. Die. Anderson did not give Silvin and Alaric any chance to stop the bullets, and with a wave of his hand, the blood bullets started to rain down from the sky like meteorites. Boom, 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 boom. As the blood bullets fell from the sky, they tore through the space and the air exploded, creating devastating shockwaves inside the space isolation formation. The vines that Silvin created earlier were ripped apart by the bullets, and the bullets were just centimeters away from colliding with Ashley and the others. However, the moment the blood bullets were about to cause havoc inside the space isolation formation, Alaric's eyes glowed, and his powerful spiritual energy burst outwards. A powerful soul pressure filled the surroundings and all the blood bullets that were filled with devastating power stopped midway. Alaric simply raised his hand and as if he was using telekinesis, he destroyed all the blood bullets with his power. Such strong spiritual power. Anderson was shocked when Alaric stopped his attack just by using his spiritual power, and his face turned ugly. Even Ashley and Leopold were surprised when they saw this, because although they knew Alaric specialized in illusion and other tricks that heavily relied on spiritual power, they didn't expect his spiritual power to reach such a terrifying level. The spiritual power of this guy is really out of this world, Evan, who was far from the battlefield, at the edge of the space isolation formation, muttered with a pale face while holding Carnage in his hand. As he held Carnage in his hand, a pitch-black bullet with golden outlines that released a sinister aura formed inside the rifle, and he waited for a perfect opportunity to fire the special bullet. While the fight between Anderson, Silvin, and Alaric was going on, Ashley received a message from Evan, asking her to teleport him to the second space isolation formation where she was. Ashley was confused when she received Evan's message and didn't understand why he wanted to come there, but she did not think too much about it and, using the power of the formation, she teleported him near her. "Is there a problem on the other side?" Ashley asked once Evan was teleported near her, thinking Anastasia might have encountered an unexpected problem while fighting Halus. Ashley had erected a space barrier in her surroundings to stop the shockwaves generated by the fight between Anderson, Silvin, and Alaric. If there was no space barrier, Evan would have turned into blood mist the moment he appeared inside the formation. Hearing Ashley's question, Evan shook his head and replied while walking out of the space barrier created by Ashley. "There is no problem. I came here because I want to try something." As Evan walked out of the space barrier, the abyssal shroud earring he was wearing lit up, and its passive skill Dragon Guard activated to protect him from the shockwaves. Dragon Guard passive skill creates a shadow barrier around the wearer in case of danger. The shadow barrier created by Abyssal Shroud can stop a full power attack of a peak rank 5 core evolver. At first, Ashley wanted to stop Evan when he tried to leave the formation, but when a black barrier that could easily stop the shockwaves appeared around Evan, she didn't say anything and let him do what he wanted. After leaving Ashley's side, Evan moved to the edge of the space isolation formation, thousands of kilometers away from the fighting scene where Anderson couldn't pay attention to him because of the tough fight against Alaric and Silvin. After arriving at the edge of the formation, he took a deep breath and took out Carnage from his shadow storage. After taking out Carnage, he used his skill Hawk's Eye and Carnage's skill Focus to clearly see the fight that was going on thousands of kilometers away from him. Although he was thousands of kilometers away, the shockwaves of the battle were still making the barrier created by Abyssal Shrouds tremble from time to time, showing just how powerful the fighting powers of ranked 6 core evolvers were. If it wasn't for the space isolation formation, Evan was certain that the fight between Alaric and the others would have easily turned hundreds or even millions of kilometers of area into ruins. Even though most of the shockwaves generated by the fight are weakened by the space isolation formation, the barrier created by Abyssal Shrouds wouldn't last long. Evan muttered in a low voice as he aimed Carnage towards Anderson, who had turned into a strange blood-like entity. After aiming Carnage towards Anderson, without any hesitation, he activated Carnage's skill Blood Bullet. Blood Bullet uses 10% of your blood essence to create a bullet that can destroy 50% of the blood essence of the target upon coming into contact with their body. If your blood essence has the power of a bloodline within it, the blood bullet will carry the power of that bloodline. You can enhance the effect of the bloodline that the blood bullet will carry with it by sacrificing more of your blood essence while creating the blood bullet. As Evan activated the blood bullet, a small black needle came out from the back of the rifle and pierced his chest, directly digging inside his heart. Evan felt uncomfortable when the needle went inside his heart but didn't lose focus. Gulp gulp, the sound of someone drinking came from Carnage, and blood-red sparks started to crackle in front of its muzzle as a red bullet slowly started to form. In less than a second, Evan lost 10% of his blood essence and the blood bullet was completely formed. However, Evan had no intention of stopping as he let Carnage continue to absorb his blood essence, allowing it to increase the power of the bloodline within the bullet. Soon he lost 70% of his blood essence and his body became extremely feeble, but he still did not stop. When he lost 90% of his blood essence and his vision started to become blurry, Evan quickly took out a stalk of blood essence grass that he had found in the tomb of the ancient and swallowed it. Blood essence grass, a rare herb that only grows in areas abundant with rich blood essence. When consumed, This grass can fully restore the blood essence of any individual below rank 5. As he swallowed the blood essence grass, his blood essence was immediately restored. But even after restoring his blood essence, Evan didn't stop and continued to let Carnage absorb more of his blood essence. He had found 10 stalks of blood essence grass in the tomb of the ancient, and in just a few minutes, he used 5 of them. Because of absorbing a large amount of blood essence, the blood bullet had already turned black in color with black sparks crackling around it. Evan looked at the black bullet and, after restoring his blood essence for the 6th time using the blood essence grass, he did the same thing as before. But this time, just before Carnage absorbed his blood essence, he activated the ability of his bloodline, Life Steal. Chap. 9:15. The moment Evan activated his bloodline ability, the blood within his body turned golden in color and a field similar to a domain tried to come out of his body. Evan forcefully suppressed the field that was trying to emerge from his body and let Carnage absorb his golden blood. As Carnage absorbed his blood, golden outlines started to appear around the black bullet, and a sinister aura covered the surroundings. Evan's face was pale white from repeatedly sacrificing his blood essence, but seeing the golden outlines around the bullet, he smiled widely and sighed in relief. Around 5 minutes later, when he saw a perfect opportunity, he pressed the trigger of the rifle. The moment Evan pressed the trigger, bang, a loud sound rang out, and soon, silence filled the entire space isolation formation. Boom, boom, boom. The sound of explosions reverberated throughout the space isolation formation, and devastating shockwaves rocked the surroundings. Tens of deep green vines moved toward Anderson like whips, tearing apart the space in the process. But seeing the vines coming toward him, Anderson, who had turned into a mass of blood, snorted coldly and dashed forward. As he dashed forward, the green vines lashed at him, but instead of injuring him, the vines passed through his body without being able to do anything. Physical attacks are useless against him unless they are strong enough to kill him with a single blow, Alaric warned Silvin when he saw what happened. Hearing Alaric, Silvin wasn't surprised as he also realized this fact. As Anderson moved toward them, Alaric took a step forward as well. Both Anderson and Alaric moved at lightning speed and clashed against each other. Because most physical attacks were useless against Anderson, Alaric had to use his spiritual power to face the vampire. Boom, boom, boom. Anderson and Alaric exchanged hundreds of blows in less than a second, shattering everything inside the space isolation formation. Different kinds of blood skills and spiritual skills ravaged the area, giving a sense of extreme danger to even Ashley and Leopold, who were rank 5 core evolvers. Suddenly, Alaric missed one of his attacks, giving Anderson a perfect chance to counterattack. Seeing the opportunity, with a swift motion of his hand, the vampire created tens of spears of condensed blood and sent them hurtling toward Alaric. The spears were glowing with chilling blood energy, and even with the reinforcement of the space isolation formation, the sharp spears nearly tore apart the space fabric, leaving behind a trail of destruction. Seeing the blood spears coming toward him, Alaric was calm. He merely raised his hand, and the spears that were moving even faster than the speed of lightning halted just a meter away from him. His eyes glowed with spiritual power, and he made a crushing motion with his hand. The moment Alaric made the crushing gesture, all the spears crumpled into a harmless red mist and disappeared. Anderson was stunned when he saw how easily Alaric stopped his attack just by using his unfathomable spiritual power. Realizing his situation was not good, the vampire roared in fury and summoned a storm of thousands of blood shards that swirled around him like a deadly blizzard. The storm of blood shards rose in the sky of the space isolation formation, painting the blue sky a crimson hue. Each blood shard, spinning in the blood storm, was releasing a powerful aura and was enough to kill a normal rank 5 core evolver. Die, you bastards! After creating the storm of blood shards, Anderson roared and sent the swirling blood shards toward Alaric and the others. Ashley and Leopold turned pale when they saw the bloodstorm coming toward them, and Ashley was ready to teleport them out of the formation. But before she could take action, "You want to kill us with this kind of attack?" Alaric spoke with disdain, and a transparent shield made of spiritual power appeared in front of the bloodstorm. The blood shards collided with the shield, causing a blinding explosion of red and white energy. Rumble. The entire space isolation formation shook and the area that had already turned into ruins was further pulverized. After stopping the blood storm, Alaric used his powerful spiritual strength, made a capturing motion with his hand and seized Anderson, who was a mass of blood with an invisible grip. "You, let me go." The vampire struggled when he was captured by Alaric and felt as if his body was being pressed under a mountain. EUBnovel.com. Alaric didn't care about Anderson's struggle and increased the pressure on him, making him scream in pain. Under the pressure of his spiritual power, the mass of blood started to condense, slowly turning into a solid. Just when Ashley and Leopold thought Anderson was done for, suddenly, a deep crimson light covered the mass of blood and, "You bastard, I said, let me go." Anderson roared in anger and his body exploded into a blood mist, breaking free from Alaric's grasp. The blood mist covered a large area of the space formation, engulfing Alaric inside. The moment Alaric was engulfed inside the blood mist, he felt his body weakening. At the same time, tens of hands made of blood attacked him from all sides. Freewebnovel.com. Feeling his strength ebbing away, Alaric clicked his tongue in annoyance and defended against the blood hands. If it wasn't because he changed the plan at the last second and didn't want us to kill him, we would have finished him long ago. Alaric thought inwardly, wondering why Evan had instructed them not to kill Anderson but just to restrain him so he could land an attack. Earlier, after Ashley teleported Evan into the space isolation formation, he had sent a message to Silvin and Alaric, telling them not to kill Anderson. Without Evan's intervention, they would have already finished Anderson off, as capturing a ranked 6-core revolver alive is much harder than killing him. "Silvin, are you not done yet?" Alaric shouted from within the blood mist while dodging the attacks of blood hands coming from all sides. Silvin didn't reply upon hearing Alaric and instead extended his hand forward. "Vine prison," he said in a low voice, and the next second, a giant magic circle that covered all the blood mist within the space isolation formation appeared on the ground. As the magic circle appeared, the ground was blown open, and thousands of vines shot out, releasing a heavy green light over the blood mist. Arg! As the green light came into contact with the blood mist, Anderson's painful scream echoed and the blood mist immediately turned back into a mass of blood. Under the power of the vines, Anderson, who had turned into a mass of blood, continued to scream in pain and couldn't break free. Silvin and Alaric sighed in relief when they saw Anderson couldn't move and were about to speak to Evan when, bang! A booming sound echoed throughout the space isolation formation as a black bullet with golden patterns, leaving behind a trail of destruction, sped towards the mass of blood at the speed of lightning. The moment Silvin stopped Anderson from moving, Evan's eyes flashed and he instantly used his soul absorption skill, sacrificing almost all the souls he had collected up until now to increase the power of the blood bullet to a terrifying degree. As Evan sacrificed millions of souls, the golden patterns that appeared on the bullet lit up like lanterns and Evan finally pressed the trigger. The moment he pressed the trigger, bang! The black bullet with golden patterns shot forward like a railgun, leaving behind a streak of black and golden light that released a sinister aura. After being caught by Silvin, Anderson was struggling furiously, trying to break free from the power of vines. Just when he was trying to break free, bang! A loud resounding sound rang out throughout the space isolation formation, and the vampire felt a chill run down his spine as if something dangerous was about to happen. Using his heightened perception, Anderson noticed a small black bullet with golden patterns coming toward him at lightning speed. Feeling the sinister aura inside the bullet, his face turned deathly pale. The power he felt from the black bullet was not very high, and he was sure that it couldn't even kill a rank 4-core revolver, but his instincts were screaming that something terrifying was hidden inside that bullet and he must not get hit by it. Feeling a sense of impending doom, Anderson burst with all his might, trying to break free from Silvin's skill. However, Alaric was faster than him and used his spiritual power to put Anderson, whose mind was in chaos, into an illusion. The moment Alaric used his skill and put Anderson in an illusion, the vampire stopped struggling, and the next second, Poochie! The blood bullet covered in golden patterns struck the mass of blood and melted inside, blending with Anderson. Evan, whose hands were nearly blown up because of the rifle's rebound, looked at everything without caring about his injuries, hoping his idea would work. Alaric and the others also watched Anderson with serious eyes, wondering what kind of effect Evan's attack would have on him. Although Silvin and the others were not hit by the blood bullet that Evan shot, they all felt the sinister aura within the bullet and knew that it was something dangerous. Of course, they also knew that although it was dangerous, even a normal rank 4 core revolver could easily dodge or stop that bullet using their power. The only reason Anderson was hit by the bullet was that he was stopped by Alaric and Silvin. If not for them, even if Evan increased the speed and power of the bullet 100 times, it wouldn't have been able to hit Anderson, who could stop the bullet with just a snap of his fingers. As Evan and the others looked at Anderson, waiting for the result, the mass of blood started to shake and returned to Anderson's normal form. After coming back to his normal appearance, Anderson didn't move, and his body dropped to the ground. The moment his body dropped to the ground, a notification flashed in front of Evan's eyes. The instant death effect of your bloodline Doom Bringer has been triggered. FEWebnovel.com. Looking at the notification, Evan's expression changed and his face turned ugly. "Fu-K, I wanted to use the life-steal ability, not the instant death effect." He cursed inwardly and looked at Anderson's lifeless body with an anxious expression, unsure whether the life-steal skill of his bloodline would activate or not. If Anderson hadn't died because of the instant death effect, Evan was at least 60% sure that the life-steal ability would have activated due to the amount of blood essence and souls he sacrificed to create the blood bullet. But now that Anderson immediately died because of the instant death effect of his bloodline, he wasn't sure if the life-steal ability would activate or not. While Evan was looking at Anderson's body anxiously, Ashley and the others had shocked looks on their faces. "Dead. He is dead," Ashley muttered in a stuttering voice, not believing a rank 6 core revolver had died because of the attack of a rank 2 core revolver. Alaric and Silvin were also similarly stunned. Although they knew Evan was the Shadow Monarch, they still felt their worldview crumble after knowing his attack had killed Anderson. "Just what the Fu-K was that attack?" Alaric muttered in a low voice, his face still showing a look of disbelief. Just when everyone was looking at Anderson's dead body with a shocked look, the vampire's body started to shake. Alaric and the others were alarmed when they saw this, but Evan's eyes lit up at the sight of the shaking body because another notification flashed in front of his eyes. "The life-steal ability of your bloodline has been activated." The moment the notification flashed in front of his eyes, a small field similar to a domain came out of Anderson's body and covered him entirely. Evan used the skill of his boots, Step of Voidgazer, and soon appeared near Ashley and the others, looking at Anderson's body with excitement on his face. "Evan, what is going on with him?" Alaric asked in a serious voice when Evan appeared near them. "Just wait a minute, and you will see." Evan smiled when he heard Alaric and replied without looking at him. Hearing Evan, Alaric and the others also looked at Anderson's body with curiosity. As they stared at Anderson's body, they all noticed it was drying at a speed visible to the naked eye and a blood-red orb, the size of a marble, was forming above his head. Evan's eyes started to shine when he saw the blood-red orb and his heart began to beat wildly. Alaric and the others frowned when they saw the blood-red orb as they could feel a tremendous power hidden deep inside it. In just 5 minutes, Anderson's body turned into a dry mummy and crumbled into dust. The moment his body crumbled into dust, the small golden field that was coming out of his body disappeared, and the blood-red orb moved toward Evan on its own. Seeing the blood-red orb coming towards him, Evan smiled slightly and easily grabbed it. Evan grabbed the blood-red, marble-sized orb and looked at it carefully. As he looked at it, its details appeared in front of his eyes. Name: Blood Life Orb. Rank: Mid-level rank 4. Type: Consumable. Energy type: Blood Energy. Note: Most suitable for vampires. Seeing the details of the blood-red orb, Evan's lips arched upwards and he barely held himself back from laughing like an idiot. When Alaric and the others saw Evan's grinning face, they also curiously touched the blood life orb and upon seeing its details, showed a confused expression as they didn't understand what it was. Seeing their confused expressions, Evan was about to explain it to them, but before he could, a space distortion appeared at the place where Anderson's body had turned into dust. Evan was stunned when he felt the space distortion and quickly backed away, thinking someone had found out about Anderson's death and was coming there. But when he looked at Alaric and the others, he saw they were looking at him with amused expressions. What's with that look? Evan asked with a dark face when he saw they were looking at him as if he was an idiot. Alaric laughed when he heard Evan and pointed towards the place where the space distortion had appeared. As Evan looked at the place, his eyes opened wide because he saw a deep red-colored portal that looked like the entrance to a secret realm had appeared there. This is... Evan was baffled when he saw the portal, but soon, he remembered the things that Cedar had told him about the core evolvers when he arrived in Utopia. Ch. 725. Is this the secret realm formed due to the death of a ranked 6 core evolver? He asked after calming down. Silvin nodded his head when he heard Evan. You know every single ranked 6 core evolver has a core world of their own, right? He said and looked at him. This portal leads to Anderson's core world that he had formed after becoming a ranked 6 core evolver. I see. Evan nodded his head hearing Silvin and looked at the portal with a thoughtful look on his face. We are not going to leave it here, right? He asked after staring at the portal for a few seconds. Of course not. Alaric rolled his eyes when he heard Evan. This is a world that can grow on its own and can produce many resources, so it's obvious we are not going to leave it here. How are we going to take it away? It's an entire world, not a cabbage that we can pick up and take away. Silvin shook his head hearing Evan and looked at Ashley. You don't have to worry about it. Ashley will take care of this matter. Hearing Silvin, Evan remembered Ashley was proficient in space and it wasn't difficult for her to move the entrance of a realm to somewhere else. While they were talking, Ashley suddenly felt something and activated the space isolation formation. As she activated the formation, an entrance appeared at the edge of the space isolation formation, and Anastasia entered. freeWeNovel.com. Seeing Anastasia coming back, Alaric smiled and asked curiously, So, how was your fight? Anastasia shook her head hearing Alaric and said in a plain voice. That guy was too weak. I didn't even use any fancy skill, and he passed out after taking a few blows. The mouths of Ashley and the others, including Evan, twitched when they heard Anastasia calling a mid-level ranked 6 demon weak and didn't know what to say. Alaric, who had asked the question, was also speechless and felt he shouldn't have asked her. While they were looking at her speechlessly, she noticed the entrance of the secret realm and smiled. It seems you killed him without any problem, huh? When Alaric and the others heard Anastasia's words, their mouths twitched and they looked at Evan, wanting to say he was the one who killed Anderson. Anastasia noticed how Alaric and the others were looking at Evan and wondered what had happened. Just when she was about to ask, she felt something in her eyes narrowed. We need to leave. Someone powerful is coming here. Anastasia spoke in a serious voice and extended her hand forward. As she extended her hand, a suction force came out of it and immediately absorbed all the lingering energy auras of Alaric and the others, leaving behind only Anderson's aura. At the same time, a different energy aura came out of her other hand, and she spread it in all directions. It was the Halus energy aura that she had collected earlier. As she spread Halus aura, the auras of Anderson and Halus merged, making it feel like it was both of them who fought here. After taking care of the energy auras, Anastasia looked at Ashley and nodded her head. Upon receiving Anastasia's signal, Ashley immediately activated the space isolation formations and then destroyed them. The space isolation formation where Anderson died and the formation where Anastasia beat Halus were created next to each other, so when the formations were destroyed, the areas inside the space isolation formations appeared next to each other, showing as if the entire area was destroyed because of a fight between Anderson and Halus. Now it looks perfect. Anastasia nodded her head in satisfaction upon seeing the result of the cleanup and looked at Alaric and the others. Let's go. We will have a great show to watch in just a few days. Evan's mouth twitched when he saw Anastasia's expression as if she was excited about seeing a TV drama and shook his head. Seeing everyone was ready to leave, Ashley used her ability and with a flash of silver light, all of them disappeared from there along with the entrance of the portal that had appeared after Anderson's fall. A few minutes after Evan and the others disappeared, a man with pale white skin and blood-red eyes appeared there and looked at the destruction with narrowed eyes. With a flash of silver light, Evan, Alaric, Silvin, Anastasia, and Leopold appeared far away from the place where Anderson died. Ashley was not with them, as she had decided to return to the closed world of Dryads to deal with Anderson's core world. You know what to do, right? After leaving the area where Anderson died, Anastasia looked at Leopold with indifferent eyes and asked. Hearing Anastasia, Leopold nodded, and suddenly, the energy within his body became chaotic. His flesh was ripped apart, his internal organs damaged, and his aura plummeted. Some cracks appeared on his core, and his face turned deathly pale as if he was seriously injured. Once his condition looked as if he was beaten like a dog by someone and barely survived, Leopold stopped harming himself and took out a teleportation plate from his storage ring. Don't forget to add as much fuel as possible when you meet Alistair, Anastasia said to Leopold as he took out the teleportation plate. Leopold nodded upon hearing Anastasia and, with a flash of silver light, disappeared from there. Once Leopold disappeared, Anastasia looked at Evan and the others and saw they were looking at her strangely. What? She raised an eyebrow when she saw their strange expressions. Nothing. Evan smacked his lips when he heard Anastasia and felt this woman was really dangerous. That guy was a rank 5 core evolver, but he willingly damaged his core as if it was nothing. Evan thought to himself and shuddered inwardly. He looked at Silvin and Alaric and, after seeing they were making the same expression as him, he felt a little better. He took out his communication crystal and called someone. Soon, the call was connected, and Evan heard Lavel's, the peak rank 3 elf, voice. We already left the Magmara kingdom. Evan smiled slightly when he heard Lavel and said in a low voice. You can go back now. And remember to tell them what I said earlier. Okay, Lavel replied in a respectful voice upon hearing Evan. Evan was about to end the call after receiving Lavel's response, but suddenly, he thought of something and spoke once again. By the way, make sure you guys injure yourselves before going back and put the blame on those 2 guys. When Alaric and Silvin heard Evan, they looked at him with twitching mouths, thinking he was catching Anastasia's bad habits. Anastasia, on the other hand, nodded her head in satisfaction and looked at Evan with doting eyes as if she was proud of him. Evan coughed when he saw the way Alaric and Silvin were looking at him and ended the call. You wanted to know what it was, right? In order to change the subject, he took out the blood life orb and showed it to Alaric and Silvin. Seeing the blood life orb, Alaric and Silvin stopped thinking about what had just happened and looked at the orb curiously. In order to change the subject, he took out the blood life orb and showed it to Alaric and Silvin. Seeing the blood life orb, Alaric and Silvin stopped thinking about what had just happened and looked at the orb curiously. ewebnovel.com. Anastasia was also surprised when she saw the blood life orb and finally understood why Evan suddenly decided to come to Ashley's side. So, he already unlocked that broken ability, huh? She thought to herself and her eyes glittered slightly as she remembered her reaction when she had seen Azeroth using this ability for the first time in the past. While Anastasia was lost in her thoughts, Evan looked at his shadow and, after thinking for a while, summoned Zorda, the peak rank 2 blood demon, from his shadow storage. Seeing Evan summoning a rank 2 shadow undead, Silvin and Alaric were confused but didn't say anything. Evan looked at Zorda, whom he had summoned, and brought him some distance away from Silvin and the others. He is the best candidate to use this thing, he muttered in a low voice and handed the blood life orb to Zorda. Zorda held the blood life orb and, seeing Evan nodding his head, he tossed the orb into his mouth. Anastasia, can you create a barrier around us to stop the energy waves? Once Zorda tossed the life blood orb into his mouth, Evan backed away and said to Anastasia. Anastasia nodded her head upon hearing Evan and created a barrier around them. As she created the barrier, Zorda, who had just swallowed the blood life orb, started to tremble and suddenly. Boom! A powerful aura erupted from his body, sending the area around him into turmoil. What the fuck? Silvin and Alaric's mouths opened wide in shock and their jaws nearly dropped to the ground when they saw what was happening. They looked at Zorda with shocked eyes as his aura started to surge and, in just a few seconds, it broke through from the peak of rank 2 and reached beginner level rank 3. But even after reaching beginner level rank 3, it didn't stop and continued to move forward. Mid-level rank 3, the peak of rank 3. Silvin and Alaric were stunned speechless, but soon their minds became completely numb because even after reaching the peak of rank 3, Zorda didn't stop. Beginner level rank 4, mid-level rank 4, freeweb no EL, C sigma M. Finally, after reaching mid-level rank 4, The energy within Zorda's body started to calm down, but even then, his rank soon reached the limit of mid-level rank 4, just a step away from reaching the peak of rank 4. After reaching the limit of mid-level rank 4, Zorda walked back towards Evan, who nodded his head in satisfaction and summoned him back inside his shadow storage. Alaric and the others were still trying to process what had just happened, so they remained silent and stood in the same place with blank looks on their faces. Anastasia shook her head after seeing the result of the blood life orb and sighed inwardly, thinking the life-steal ability was as broken as ever. After a full minute of silence, Alaric finally came back to his senses and looked at Evan with a horrified look on his face. "You are fucking kidding me." The life-steal ability allows Evan to extract the power of core evolvers and condense it into a consumable item that he can use himself or give to other people. The person who uses the consumable item created by the life-steal ability will receive all the powers of the person whose power was extracted. Normally, the power of this ability depends on Evan's own rank. For example, his current rank is mid-level rank 2. With his current rank, using the full power of life-steal ability, he can extract the power of mid-level rank 3 core evolvers. However, if he wants to extract the power of a higher level core evolver, it would be very difficult for him to do so without increasing the rank of his core. But the Blood Bullet skill of Carnage is a special skill that allows him to increase the ability of his bloodline by sacrificing his blood essence. While creating the Blood Bullet, he sacrificed a large amount of blood essence in the hope that by using the life-steal ability of his bloodline through Carnage, he would be able to affect Anderson despite the differences in their ranks. And just as he had expected, when the effect of his life-steal ability triggered through the Blood Bullet, which was created by sacrificing a large amount of blood essence and further boosted by millions of souls, it successfully affected the rank 6 core evolver. However, because of the difference between their power levels, even with the help of the Blood Bullet, the life-steal ability was only able to extract power equal to that of mid-level rank 4 instead of mid-level rank 6. Evan had already expected that no matter what he did, it would be impossible for him to extract mid-level rank 6 power from Anderson, so he wasn't surprised when he saw that the rank of the Blood Life Orb was mid-level rank 4. Although this ability is incredibly powerful, there are also some limitations to it. For example, after using it once, Evan won't be able to use it again for a long period of time. The life-steal ability uses the power of his bloodline, which is different from world essence or conceptual energy. Although using the power of his bloodline doesn't affect him, it still takes a long time to recover the power of his bloodline after using it. The power of his bloodline is like a consumable energy that disappears after one use and slowly recovers on its own. Besides the fact that he can't use it frequently, there is also the problem that without the enhanced effect of the Blood Bullet skill, it is difficult for him to extract the power of core evolvers. He can extract the power of rank 1 and 2 core evolvers even if they try to resist the effect of life steal, but with his current rank, if rank 3 core evolvers resist with all their might, it would be difficult for him to extract their power. To extract the power of rank 3 core evolvers without any problem, he will first have to seriously injure the person whose power he wants to extract. Not only that, after extracting the power, although he can give it to anyone, the best way to use the extracted power is to give it to someone who is compatible with it. Zorda, whom Evan gave Anderson's power to, was a blood demon. Although he wasn't a vampire, his understanding of blood energy was very high, which is why he chose him as Zorda could use Anderson's power to the fullest. FGEwenvel.com. If he had given Anderson's power to someone like Elysia, Eclipse, or another shadow undead who is not compatible with Anderson's power, even though they would have become a mid-level rank 4 core evolver, it would have been impossible for them to use Anderson's power to the fullest. Although there were some minor flaws in this skill, especially the fact that he couldn't use it again in a short period of time after using it once, Evan was very satisfied with this skill. He didn't think about increasing his own rank using the life steal ability because he knew there was no one in Utopia whose power was compatible with his. It's not only because there are very few people like him who can use the conceptual energy of the void, but also because of his core, the primordial monarch core. Unlike the cores of other people, his core was special. Even though he was just a mid-level rank 2 core evolver, his core could give him enough power to face rank 3 core evolvers without even using his authorities. The power of a core like the primordial monarch core couldn't be increased by absorbing the power of other people. But Evan didn't care about this fact because he never thought about increasing the rank of his core using the life-steal ability. He was already happy that he could increase the rank of his shadow undeads using this skill. For the current Evan, as long as he wasn't fighting against numerous opponents, his shadow undeads were not much help because his strength was increasing rapidly, while his shadow undeads couldn't increase their rank to keep up with him. But using the life-steal ability, he could increase the rank of his top shadow undeads rapidly, which would greatly increase his power. When Evan explained the life-steal ability to Silvin and Alaric, both of them were shocked and didn't know what to say. Alaric even thought about asking Evan to extract the power of some useless monsters in the dark forest and give it to some other monsters who could work for him. Silvin, on the other hand, was thinking about asking Evan to extract the power of some elves and increase the power of the dryads. Although Silvin was a kind-hearted person, he hated elves to his core and wouldn't feel bad about killing them. When Evan saw Silvin's and Alaric's expressions after hearing about the life-steal ability, his face turned strange because he felt these two old men were thinking about something sinister. Sure enough, we are becoming more and more like a villainous organization that wants to destroy the world. He thought when he saw their expressions and felt he needed to keep his distance from them if he wanted to keep his sanity in check. Maybe, now that I can increase the rank of my shadow undeads, I should go to that damn forbidden land of Utopia to get some answers. Let's hope that guy will agree, or it will be a waste of time. Evan muttered while flying leisurely. After what we did last night, the chances of him agreeing to what we proposed last time are quite high, Anastasia replied with a thoughtful look on her face as she flew beside Evan. Hopefully, you are right, Evan said with a sigh, and soon both of them reached the mountain valley where the lava demons were hidden. Stepping inside the mountain valley, both of them came in front of the mountain wall where the entrance to the cave was located. The entrance was hidden because of the concealment formation, but when Anastasia and Evan stopped in front of the mountain wall, the effect of the formation disappeared and they saw three lava demons, who had attacked them last time, standing inside the cave with nervous looks on their faces. Although they didn't know Evan and Anastasia's true identity, they were still scared of Anastasia, who easily subdued them last time. It seems these kids are afraid of you, Evan said to Anastasia with an amused look on his face. You are really a big bad villainess who likes to scare kids, huh? Anastasia's eyes twitched when she heard Evan, but she didn't say anything and walked inside with an expressionless look on her face. freewebnovel.com. Evan also followed her, and when he passed by the three lava demons, he warned them in a low voice. Be careful of her, that woman has a very wicked personality. Not long ago, she turned an innocent businessman into her slave using a curse because she wanted to use him for her own benefit. The faces of the three lava demons turned pale when they heard what Evan said, and they looked at Anastasia, who was walking ahead, with fear in their eyes. Evan was satisfied with the reactions of the three innocent lava demons and quickly followed Anastasia, who had an irritated look on her face. As Evan followed Anastasia with a smile on his face, a black golden light flashed, and Alora appeared on his shoulder. Father, is what you said true? Is Mother really a big bad villainess with a wicked personality? Alora asked in a curious voice while holding Evan's head so that she wouldn't fall down from his shoulder. When Evan heard Alora, he was stunned for a moment, but soon he came back to his senses and was about to answer when he noticed Anastasia had stopped walking and was looking at him with narrowed eyes. Seeing Anastasia's narrowed eyes, he felt that if he said she was indeed a wicked woman, he wouldn't get high-quality food for a few days, so he deceptively changed the words he was about to speak. What are you talking about, Alora? Don't you know your mother is a very kind person? If she were a wicked villainess, she wouldn't make tasty food for you every day, right? Oh, Alora nodded her head upon hearing Evan and felt that what he said made sense. So, the person who gives tasty food is a good person, and the person who doesn't give tasty food is a wicked person. Alora thought inwardly, and a look of understanding shone on her face as if she had just gained enlightenment. Evan looked at Alora, who seemed to have just discovered the truth of the world, and felt she was thinking something stupid, but he decided not to say anything. Anastasia also smiled slightly when she heard Evan's response and patted Alora's head. I will make a lot of good dishes for you once we return. Alora's eyes lit up when she heard Anastasia, and she nodded her head happily. Her mother is giving her tasty food, so she is definitely not a wicked person. It seems I can still get high-quality food that can increase the rank of my corps. Evan also thought to himself. All right, Alora, go back for now, he said to the red-haired girl and told her to go back since he didn't want her to appear in front of Saroth. Alora didn't say anything upon hearing Evan and went back into his soul space. Once Alora went back, Anastasia looked at Evan and said in a flat voice. You are not getting any food for 1 week. What? Evan was stunned when he heard Anastasia and looked at her with a baffled look on his face. Anastasia didn't say anything upon seeing Evan's baffled look and went deeper into the cave. Evan's mouth twitched when he saw Anastasia walking away, and he complained while following her. I'm not getting any food for 1 whole week. Don't tell me I even need to sleep on the sofa from now on. Anastasia's lips arched upwards when she heard Evan and she said with a smile on her face. No, not on the sofa, you are going to sleep with me from now on. This woman, she is really creating her own script. Evan was speechless when he heard Anastasia. Soon, both of them reached the deepest part of the cave where they had talked to Saroth the last time. When they arrived, they didn't see Saroth, but they didn't think too much about it and waited for him. Before coming, Anastasia had already informed him, so they were not worried about him not meeting them. About half an hour later, Evan and Anastasia saw the iron door at the end of the corridor open and Saroth walked out of the room. Looks like you are working overtime to create that armor, Anastasia said when she saw Saroth coming towards them. Saroth shook his head, hearing Anastasia, and said in a calm voice. The armor is still far from being completed. It will still take some time before it is finished. Anastasia wasn't surprised when she heard Saroth, as she knew it was not easy to process high-level items and create an artifact from them. So she didn't talk about it and directly went to the main topic. You know why we are here, right? Saroth fell silent after hearing Anastasia. Evan and Anastasia didn't say anything seeing Saroth was silent, and waited for him to think things through. After a minute of silence, Saroth looked at Evan and asked in a serious voice. Is what you told me on the communication crystal true? I have no reason to lie to you. Even if you don't believe me, you will find out about it on your own in 1 or 2 days. You are right. Saroth sighed when he heard Evan, and after thinking about everything, he looked at Evan with resolute eyes. I accept your proposal, freewebano-vel.com. Hearing Saroth, Evan and Anastasia smiled, but before they could say anything, Saroth spoke once again. However, I have a condition. Taking advantage of Halus' injuries, the team of elves escaped using a teleportation scroll but were still seriously injured by him. Because Halus tried to kill the team of elves, the Elvenshine Empire also turned against him. As one faction after another pressured the Gehenna Empire, its situation started to worsen, and it was currently being targeted by many forces. After seeing the situation of the Gehenna Empire, Evan and others, who orchestrated all of this, first kidnapped a blackbird named Biscuit and finally returned to the hidden world of the Dryads. That it is a place where kids can go. Evan sighed when he heard Alora and shook his head. Forget it, I will take you with me when I leave, he said while looking into the distance. I can't leave her here, or those 2 old bastards will corrupt my daughter. Alora's eyes lit up when she heard Evan say he would bring her with him. Seeing Alora's shining eyes, Evan picked her up from the ground and said in a light voice. Earlier, I was joking with you. The place we will be going is not a place where we can eat delicious food. Instead, it's a place where we might become food for others. With Alora, Evan came to a special area in the closed world of Drades. Unlike the other places in the closed world, which were normally filled with green trees, mountains, and rivers, this place was completely remote with no sign of trees or other vegetation. The ground in the area was completely flat and filled with cracks. The soil was dark brown, and occasional bursts of hot steam came out of the cracked ground from time to time. The temperature in the area was very high, reaching a point where even a normal rank 1 core evolver would have to use world essence to protect themselves if they didn't want to become a sweating fountain. As Evan walked while looking at the new landscape, he couldn't help but shake his head. It seems the Earth genome flame is really suitable for transforming the land to perfectly suit the lava demons, he muttered in a low voice and soon saw some stone structures that looked like houses. As Evan got closer to the houses, he noticed many lava demons who were doing their own jobs, trying to create an environment most suitable for them. When Evan and the others came back to the closed world of Drades from the Magmara kingdom, they brought back Saroth and the other lava demons as well. It wasn't difficult for them to convince Saroth to come with them as the lava demons were already tired of living in the small hidden area where the Earth genome fire was located. Moreover, in her first meeting with Saroth, Anastasia had mentioned that she received information about him from Valter. Valter was the one who taught Saroth blacksmithing, so he did not think he would give information about the lava demons to someone who would harm them. In the end, after considering the situation of the lava demons, Saroth decided to accept Anastasia and Evan's offer and move to the closed world of Drades. Before moving, Saroth also put forward a condition that he wanted to meet Valter. Anastasia easily agreed to his request but told him that Valter was currently busy with something and it would take a few years before he would be able to meet him. Saroth was more than 30,000 years old, so the waiting time of a few years was nothing to him. He agreed and moved to the closed world of Drades along with the other lava demons. Now, for alchemy, we have Octavius, and for forging, we have Saroth, Evan thought inwardly and smiled slightly. As he thought about alchemy, Evan suddenly remembered Amara and felt a headache. She is still hell-bent on trying to properly understand that ancient alchemy thing. He muttered in a low voice and rubbed his eyebrows. In the tomb of the ancient, Evan had found information about ancient alchemy. After he showed it to Amara, she had been trying to learn it ever since, but her efforts were not bearing any fruit. Her rank is too low to understand the ancient alchemy. Maybe I should help her increase her rank using the life steal skill. Evan thought to himself and examined the bloodline power within his body. It's been a month since he used his bloodline power, and it was almost fully recovered. In just 1 or 2 days, he was certain he would be able to use the life steal ability once again. Although I can use life steal to help her, I still need to find a good target, Evan muttered, and a candidate suddenly came to his mind. Although it will be a little troublesome, it's not impossible. While deep in thought, Evan soon reached the front of a stone house that was very different from the other houses the lava demons had created. freewebnovel.com. Although similar to other houses, it was also made of stones, but unlike the gray stones, the stones used in creating this house were dark violet in color, and the temperature around the house was nearly 5 or 6 times higher than in other areas. Damn, it's good that my physical condition is higher than normal core evolvers, otherwise, I might have died from dehydration. Evan opened the door of the house while complaining, and the moment the door opened, a burst of hot air slapped his face. At the same time, the temperature of the surroundings increased even more and he had to use prismatic fire to cover his body in order to avoid the heat. Don't just stand there and close the door already. As Evan was trying to adjust to the sudden increase in temperature, he heard a slightly irritated voice. Why do you always act like a grumpy old man who's always in a bad mood? Evan rolled his eyes when he heard Saroth's irritated voice and entered the house, closing the door behind him. Upon entering the house, Evan saw that the floor was a complete mess, with different kinds of materials scattered all over. At the end of the house, there was a pit around 10 meters in diameter, with a deep orange flame burning within it. In the middle of the burning pit, there was a platform made of deep purple stone, and Saroth was standing on it, doing his work. Saroth didn't care about Evan's sarcastic words and without turning back, asked in a flat voice. Why are you here? Well, I am here for my armor. Is it ready? Saroth stopped what he was doing when he heard Evan and turned around to look at him. It's the 5th time you've asked me this question this week. Are you planning to go to war or something? You need that armor urgently? He asked while looking at Evan with a tired look on his face. Evan shook his head, hearing Saroth, and replied in a calm voice. I'm not planning to go to war, but the place I will be going is dangerous, so I need that armor. Dangerous place? Saroth raised an eyebrow when he heard Evan and asked in a curious voice, where are you planning to go? Evan was silent hearing Saroth, but after a moment, he opened his mouth and said in a low voice. The Forbidden Land of Utopia. Forbidden Land, Saroth was surprised when he heard Evan and looked at him strangely. Why are you going to the Forbidden Land? Don't tell me after turning the Gehenna Empire upside down, now you want to mess with the barbarians who live there. Evan was speechless when he heard Saroth and asked while rubbing his eyebrows. Do you think I am mentally ill or something who likes to cause chaos everywhere? Well, Saroth didn't speak loudly but his expression clearly said, aren't you? Black lines appeared on Evan's forehead when he saw Saroth's expression, and he took some deep breaths to stay calm. Damn it, why does everyone think that I am some kind of maniac who likes to cause chaos everywhere? Seeing Evan's irritated expression, Saroth coughed lightly and changed the subject. So, why are you going to the Forbidden Land? That place is quite dangerous. Especially for the low-level core evolvers like you. Hearing Saroth, Evan calmed down a bit and said in a light voice. I just need to confirm a few things there, and I will avoid the barbarians and other species who live there, so it won't be dangerous. Even if you ignore them they won't ignore you. Saroth shook his head when he heard Evan. Evan raised an eyebrow and asked in a curious voice, have you been in the Forbidden Land before? Freeweb Eta Oval. CM. Yes. Saroth nodded his head. It was a few thousand years ago when I went there. At that time, I was just a rank 4 core evolver. I went there to look for a suitable place for lava demons, hoping to find a place where we could live without any fear. But the environment of the Forbidden Land was completely unsuitable for us lava demons. While I was in the Forbidden Land, I met a rank 4 barbarian. Similar to me, he was also at the peak of rank 4 and when he saw me, he challenged me to a fight. Saroth paused after saying this and after a moment continued with a bitter smile on his face. During the fight, I was completely outmatched by him and he defeated me without much trouble. Only after fighting him did I realize just how strong the barbarians who live in the Forbidden Land are. Evan was stunned when he heard Saroth's words. Although it hasn't been long since he came to Utopia, he knew that lava demons are one of the strongest demon species, but Saroth is saying he was beaten by someone who was the same rank as him without much trouble. Could it be that guy was a top genius of the barbarian race? Evan muttered with a pondering look on his face. Hearing Evan's muttering, Saroth chuckled and shook his head. At that time, I also thought the same thing. But soon I realized just how wrong I was because after that guy, I met 2 more barbarians while I was in the Forbidden Land. And both of them were also as outstanding as the one who defeated me first. Damn, old man, I never thought you were so weak, Evan said with a strange expression on his face when he heard Saroth was defeated 3 times in the Forbidden Land. Saroth's face twitched uncontrollably when he heard Evan, but he did not say anything because he also felt he was indeed weak when compared to the top lava demons like Valter. By the way, have you found anything strange about those barbarians? I mean, it seems unrealistic to me that every single barbarian is more powerful than normal evolvers at the same rank. Hearing Evan, Saroth thought for a moment and said in an uncertain voice. I am not entirely sure, but I think all the barbarians possess a special bloodline or something that increases their power to a higher level than the core evolvers of the same rank. Moreover, the physical abilities of those guys are completely out of this world. Even the giants, who are known for their physical strength, are inferior to them. Bloodline. Evan raised an eyebrow when he heard Saroth and felt he might be right. After all, he knew very well some bloodline skills could give their wielder a huge advantage in a fight against the same rank. Core evolver. There is also a chance that the barbarians have a special physique, but it's unlikely because Saroth said all the barbarians were stronger than the normal core evolvers of the same rank, and it's impossible for all the barbarians to possess a special physique. Evan thought about everything, but in the end, he shook his head. Forget it, I will understand everything once I go there, he said to himself and his lips arched upwards slightly. Besides, the stronger the barbarians, the better it will be for me. Evan had no intention of fighting against the barbarians, but if they came to trouble him, he wouldn't mind collecting some of them into his shadow storage. Just be careful when you go there. Saroth was unaware of Evan's thoughts and said calmly. Come back in 3 days, I will finish your armor by then. 3 days, huh? Evan rubbed his chin upon hearing Saroth and nodded his head. All right, I will come back after 3 days, he said and started to walk towards the door. As he reached the door, Evan remembered something and shouted to let Saroth hear his voice, who was hammering a metal. "Don't forget to add that thing to the armor." Saroth didn't respond hearing Evan, but Evan knew that the lava demon heard him, so he didn't stay there any longer and left the house. As soon as he left the house, the temperature around him decreased quite a bit. Although it was still very high for normal people, he didn't need to use prismatic fire to protect himself. "Now that I just have 3 days, I should prepare a few things that will help me in that damned place," Evan said to himself and left from there. Name: Evan Azroth. Race: Eltern. Current syncretization rate between your race Eltern and the origin universe, 62%. Rank: mid-level rank 2. Bloodline: Doombringer. Partially awakened, 2nd stage. Strength: 1321. Agility: 1279. Endurance: 1410 plus 1410. Effective ruler's authority. World essence: 1450. Stamina: 1398. Intelligence: 1300 plus 130. Effective false progenitor title. Primordial shadow energy: 2000. Current understanding of the conceptual energy of void: 30.03%. Bound flame, prismatic fire. While lying in his bed, Evan looked at his status window with a pondering look on his face. "In just 1 or 2 days, I should be able to reach the peak of rank 2. He muttered in a low voice as his gaze shifted towards his understanding of void energy. Current understanding of conceptual energy of void: 30.03%. Now I need to focus on the void energy and increase it to the 75% mark. Looking at his understanding of void energy, Evan thought about using the void crystals to increase it, but after careful consideration, he decided to stick to his old plan and use them during the later stage, as the difficulty of increasing the understanding of void energy will increase greatly later on. "I told Alaric and Leopold to keep an eye out for the void crystal, so I should be able to get some of them in a few months," Evan said to himself and closed his status window. It's been 3 days since he talked to Saroth, and just a few hours ago, Saroth sent him his fully prepared armor. "Now that I have finally gotten my armor, I can leave tomorrow." While Evan was thinking about the Forbidden Land, the door of his room opened and Anastasia entered. Evan, who was lying lazily on his bed, lifted his head a little, and when he saw Anastasia, his eyes became dazed for a moment and his body heated up. But soon he came back to his senses and his mouth couldn't help but twitch. "This woman," he cursed inwardly and felt a headache. Anastasia walked towards Evan and upon noticing his twitching mouth, she asked in confusion, "What's wrong?" Evan rubbed his head when he heard her and asked in a tired voice, "What's with the clothes you are wearing?" "My clothes," Anastasia muttered in a confused voice and looked at the transparent purple nightgown she was wearing, clearly showing the black lingerie underneath it. "I can't sleep in those baggy clothes, so I just changed into comfortable ones." "Bullshit," Evan shouted inwardly and looked at her with dead eyes because she had been sleeping in normal clothes for the last month. Anastasia ignored Evan's dead eyes and climbed on his bed, resting her head on his chest comfortably. Evan looked at Anastasia's alluring figure beside him, took a deep breath to keep himself calm and said in a serious voice while looking at her deep black eyes, "Anastasia, we can't, not now." Anastasia remained silent upon hearing Evan and stared at his serious eyes. After a minute of silence, she lifted her hand and caressed his face. "Are you still thinking about that curse?" Evan placed his hand on Anastasia's hand and said in a low voice, "I don't know the exact effect of this cursed one title, but from my experience, I am certain that the closer I am to someone, the more that person gets affected by it. The first time his cursed one title reacted was when he worked with the Terror Brothers and got closer to them. They started to work for him, collecting information for him and doing some minor tasks, but soon they were captured by Oliva and died at her hands. Although it might just be a coincidence, after knowing his title affects the people around him, Evan just couldn't rule out the possibility that their death might be related to the effect of his title. There were too many uncertain things about his title, and considering the personality that he adopted in Aurora World to keep his distance from others, he couldn't help but think that something bad might happen if he got too close to someone. "I am immune to all curses, you know, so why are you still thinking about it?" Anastasia asked in a soft voice. "It's not about whether you are immune to curses or not," Evan said with a sigh. The problem is that we don't have all the information about my title. We know it affects my emotions to some extent and also the people I am closer to, but who knows if there are other effects as well that we don't know about. Anastasia was silent hearing Evan. After a moment, she sighed and spoke while burying her head in his chest. I feel like you are just being paranoid. It's better to be paranoid rather than regret something in the future, Evan said with a shake of his head and paused. After a moment, he opened his mouth and spoke again. Besides, the effect of the Cursed One title has already dropped quite a bit, so there is a high possibility that I will be able to get rid of it soon. Getting rid of this title, Anastasia muttered in a low voice and brought her mouth closer to his ear. What will you do after getting rid of this title? She whispered in a seductive voice. Evan felt Anastasia's hot breath brushing past his ear and cursed her inside his mind. He pushed her face away and said in a flat voice, I will find a good wife after getting rid of this title so that you won't have to waste your time cooking for me and Alora. Anastasia's face darkened when she heard Evan and her eyes became empty. Evan felt a chill run down his spine when he saw Anastasia's eyes and a sudden thought came to his mind. It can't be, she is not a yandere, right? Slowly, Evan stood up from the bed and considering his own safety, he decided to run away to the Forbidden Land early. Unfortunately, even before he could leave the room, he was caught by Anastasia and failed to escape to the Forbidden Land. Although there shouldn't be any problem, make sure you don't take off the abyssal shroud earring, otherwise, there is a chance that other people might find you, Anastasia said to Evan as both of them flew towards the teleportation building of the hidden world of Drades. Don't worry, I will be careful, Evan nodded upon hearing her. As they flew, Anastasia took out a storage ring and handed it to Evan. Give it to Alora. Evan took the storage ring and raised an eyebrow. What's inside it? That glutton was pestering me for the past few days that she is going somewhere with her father and asked me to make a lot of dishes for her that she can eat after leaving, Anastasia said while shaking her head. Why did she ask you to make dishes for her? I could have cooked for her after leaving. Hearing Evan, a mocking smile appeared on Anastasia's face and she said in an amused voice. I told her you could cook for her, but she said your cooking is average and doesn't taste as good as mine. Evan's mouth twitched when he heard Anastasia but he didn't know what to say. This woman corrupted my daughter. She used to delightfully eat my cooking, but now she is saying my cooking is average and doesn't taste good. Although Evan knew his cooking was actually even worse than average, he still felt distressed after hearing Anastasia. I think I should taste some of the dishes from this storage ring and learn how to make good dishes. He thought and looked at the storage ring with flashing eyes. Just when Evan was thinking about tasting some of the dishes from the storage ring, a black golden light flashed around the ring and it disappeared. At the same time, he heard Alora sighing in relief as if she had just escaped a disaster. Evan was speechless when he heard Alora sighing in relief and looked at Anastasia with narrowed eyes. I was right, this woman really corrupted my daughter, otherwise, she would have definitely shared her food with me. Anastasia ignored Evan's narrowed eyes and continued to fly with a smile on her face. Soon, both of them reached the teleportation building and saw Ashley standing there. Is everything ready? Evan asked after landing some distance away from the teleportation building. I have set the coordinates. Though, even after the teleportation, you will have to fly for 1 or 2 days to reach your destination, Ashley said as she led Evan and Anastasia inside the building. The location of my teleportation is far away from the Elvenshine Empire, right? Although the Forbidden Land and the Elvenshine Empire are both located in the Southern Territory, they are still millions of kilometers apart from each other, so you don't have to worry about that, Ashley said in a light voice as the three of them came in front of a teleportation formation. It must have taken you hundreds of years to create this teleportation building that is connected with all the places of Utopia, right? Anastasia said in a curious voice as she looked at the teleportation formation engraved in front of her. Yes, I started working on this thing when I became a rank 4 core evolver and was able to finish it only after becoming a rank 5 core evolver. Ashley said with a sigh as she remembered the days when she had to run from one place to another to connect the teleportation formation to all the places of Utopia. Anastasia nodded her head in admiration hearing Ashley and didn't say anything else. All right, stand in the middle of the formation so I can send you away, Ashley said after checking the formation one last time. Evan nodded his head, hearing Ashley, and stood in the middle of it. Be careful and don't act recklessly because the people who live in the Forbidden Land are not normal, Anastasia said in a serious voice. I have no intention of messing with the people of Forbidden Land. I am going there just to confirm a few things, Evan said with a sigh, unable to understand why everyone is thinking he is going to the Forbidden Land to cause trouble. Are you ready? Ashley asked once Evan stood on the teleportation formation. Hearing Ashley, Evan nodded his head and in the next second, his appearance changed, making him look like an ordinary elf with a very low presence. At the same time, a burst of silver light engulfed the surroundings and Evan disappeared from there. Once Evan disappeared, Ashley deactivated the formation and looked at Anastasia. Why did you not go with him? The Forbidden Land is quite dangerous. Aren't you worried something might happen to him there? Anastasia rolled her eyes at Ashley's question and replied in a calm voice. If you think he will be in danger just because his rank is low compared to top-level core evolvers of Utopia, then you are greatly mistaken. Even though his rank is low, he will be safe as long as a powerful rank 5 core evolver doesn't make a move against him. She paused after saying this and added after a moment, as for why I didn't go with him, it's because he refused to take me, saying there is no need for me to go with him. Rank 5. Ashley was surprised when she heard Anastasia, but she didn't doubt her words, especially when she thought about Evan's abnormality. By the way, do you know why he did not take you with him? Anastasia nodded her head, hearing Ashley and turned around to leave. I have a hunch, but I am not entirely sure if I am correct or not. Ashley looked at Anastasia's departing figure and shook her head. She glanced at the teleportation formation one last time and disappeared from there. At the same time, in a dark place somewhere in the southern territory of Utopia, a silver light flashed and Evan appeared there. Evan, who currently looked like an ordinary elf with black hair, looked around him and found he was standing inside the hollow trunk of a giant tree. A few concealment formations were engraved inside the hollow tree trunk, hiding the teleportation formation, and there was no entrance to go outside or come inside the tree trunk. Do I need to break this tree to go outside? Evan muttered with a speechless look on his face and used his spiritual senses to look outside of the tree trunk. Upon looking outside, he saw the tree he was in was actually bursting with vitality and was filled with green leaves with thousands of flowers blooming on it. The trunk of this tree is completely hollow, but from the outside, it is bursting with vitality. Evan muttered with a surprised look on his face and, after confirming there was no one in his surroundings, he used the nether stride skill of his boots of Voidgazer to leave the tree trunk and come outside. I don't know what Ashley was thinking when she created the formation inside this trunk. If a person doesn't have the skill to teleport out, they would have to shatter the tree, which will leave the teleportation formation in the open, Evan said with a shake of his head and took a step forward. As he took a step forward, he disappeared from his place and appeared high in the sky. After appearing high in the sky, Evan noticed he was currently in the middle of a vast forest, and even with his exceptional eyes that could see thousands of kilometers away, he couldn't see the end of the forest. As expected from the southern territory where the Empire of Elves is located. This place is really a paradise for those who love nature, Evan said to himself as he looked at the vast forest under him. Well, I would have loved to go to the Elvenshine Empire to tour around, but now is not the time. The storage ring Evan was wearing flashed, and a 50-meter-long airship in the shape of a water droplet appeared in front of him. The airship was jet black in color and it was releasing the aura of a peak rank 4 artifact. Although that old foxy guy is annoying, his connections are really useful. Evan said to himself as he nodded his head in satisfaction while looking at the airship. Normally, it would have been difficult for him to get a peak rank 4 airship in a short period of time, but Alaric had a lot of connections, so it wasn't difficult for him to get a rank 4 airship. I should be able to reach my destination in just a few hours using this, Evan said and put his hand on the airship. After putting his hand on it, he poured some of his world essence into it, and the moment he did, the airship opened, and Evan entered. As he entered, the airship closed behind him and he found himself standing in a large hallway. This ship is really huge. Evan used his spiritual senses to scan the airship and found it had a space of nearly 100 kilometers, with the largest area occupied by the training ground. Evan didn't care too much about the space inside the airship and took a step forward, instantly appearing in the control room of the ship. The airship had its own AI intelligence, so after coming to the control room, Evan simply sat down on the chair and told the AI to move towards the fragile end. The fragile end is the name of the city built closer to the Forbidden Land. This city is very similar to Star City, which is built near the Dark Forest. Like the Star City, which is the gathering place for the people who enter the Dark Forest, the Fragile End is the gathering place for the people who enter the Forbidden Land. Although Star City and Fragile End are similar to each other, there is still a very big difference between them. The Dark Forest is divided into different parts, like the outer area, middle area, and others, so even the low-level core evolvers can enter the Dark Forest to look for fortune. Because of this, you can find many low-level core evolvers in the Star City. But the Fragile End is different. The Forbidden Land is a very dangerous place, not only because of the monsters and the people who live there but because of its environment as well. There are not many low-level core evolvers who have the courage to enter the Forbidden Land, so most of the people who gather in the Fragile End are high-level core evolvers. Rank 1 and Rank 2 core evolvers are a minority in the Fragile End, and most of the people are Rank 3 or above. FGEEWEBNOL. C Sigma M. Although I have Zorda who reached mid-level rank 4, I still need to be careful in that place. Evan said to himself and closed his eyes. The reason he was going to Fragile End instead of directly entering the Forbidden Land was because he wanted to buy a map of the Forbidden Land before going there. After confirming that the airship was moving towards the Fragile End, Evan closed his eyes and focused on his core. He was just a little bit away from reaching the peak of rank 2, so he wanted to see if he could break through before reaching the Fragile End. The peak rank 4 airship moved at the speed of lightning, and Evan continued to absorb more world essence to reach the peak of rank 2. ewebnovel.com. While Evan was trying to break through, Alora came out of his soul space and seeing he was busy, she started to move around the ship in search of something interesting. In the blink of an eye, 2 hours passed by and the AI of the ship informed Evan that they were about to reach the Fragile End. Hearing the AI, Evan opened his eyes and took a deep breath. I just need to cultivate for 1 or 2 hours more and I should be able to reach the peak of rank 2, he muttered and stood up from his seat. As he stood up, a screen appeared in front of him, showing a magnificent city built in the middle of a vast forest. So this is the Fragile End, huh? Evan muttered in a low voice and ordered the AI of the ship to stop moving forward.